California then had a whole series of evolution in 1991, standard offer contract 1, 2, 3, 4, and there was a huge amount of enthusiasm. So Government of India not do the same thing in India. Incidentally, our name of IPPAI was given from that evolution. I had the fortune of an inside view of the whole development right from Washington DC to Shiv Shakti Bhavan, where we were able to figure out कि हो क्या रहा है, क्यों हो रहा है. When the private sector decided to come into India, there was a lot of opposition, not only from the incumbents, but the multilaterals. But the multilaterals which were financing the government sector. So you had a whole building in Washington, which I happen to visit often, called the India Division. तो opposition वहाँ से शुरू हो गया कि भाई ये private वालों को मत बुलाओ. During the evolution of that period, a lot of private sector IPPs were lined up. Quite a few of them came to India. Again, myself and Mr. Gentleman from Tata Power, the only two so-called private sector, बाकी तो सब सरकार के हाथ में था. We were put on the job कि भैया you front end this investment story and all that stuff, and we had to report back to Mr. Chandraji on what has happened during the discussion. The problem that came up first was, how will you finance these projects? Will government finance it? Will private sector finance it? So the decision was taken, it be done by private sector. I still remember coming to this building in 92, 93, when Mr. Gambhir was there, and I would like to give an anecdote because I know there will be a very serious discussion after me on the block clauses and everyone's very excited. But there was one gentleman who was chairman of a very big American company and Mr. Gambhir was in charge. So यहाँ पे discussion हो गया, तो he said, why can't you give me the techno-economic clearance? What's your problem? I know your prime minister, I know so-and-so, I know President Bill Clinton, blah, blah, blah. Gambhir Saab was a very cool guy. He said, good. Why don't you ask the prime minister to give it to you? I mean, there's a procedure, there's a process, don't push me. So there was this multiple clashes taking place, multiple differences of opinion taking place, and the IPPs that came were trying very hard to fit the American system into the Indian system, and that, of course, was little impossible at that time. For example, one discussion where I was involved in was this company was asked, please show us your balance sheet. The chairman looked at him and said, what balance sheet? We are government. He said, that may be so, but how do we get finance unless we have your balance sheet? He said, we don't have balance sheets. तो इतना मतलब evolution जो ज़रूरी था to adapt a completely different system of structured finance, हम इंडिया में लाने की कोशिश कर रहे थे. The only project I remember in those days that was running was near Delhi, the Noida toll bridge, which was running on future revenue flows, etc., etc. Now, all this went on, and there were huge amount of discussions and almost very intensive discussions in Delhi, in Mumbai, etc., etc. Then we find that one particular company, which has become disreputable now, but it was an amazing company, decided to set up a 2,875 megawatt plant based on LNG in Dhabol. Nobody knew what LNG is. तो सारा process of learning started कि भाई कतार एक जगह है, वहाँ रासलफान का फील्ड है, वहाँ पे गैस आती है, इतने सेंट की आती है, दिस इज़ द कॉस्ट. उसको लिक्विफाई करते हैं, उसके बाद रीगैस करते हैं, उसको ट्रांसपोर्ट करते हैं ऑन दी स्पेशल शिप्स विच आर क्रायोजेनिक वेसल्स. फॉर गाइज लाइक मी हू आर नॉट टेक्निकल, इट वाज अ ब्रेन ट्रांसप्लांट. हमें कुछ समझ में तो आता नहीं था, अभी भी नहीं आता है, लेकिन थोड़ा बहुत ओवर अ पीरियड ऑफ टाइम वी हैव बीन एबल टू सी. सो वन सॉ huge ideas, new technologies, new ideas coming, both in terms of the generation of power as well as financing. Now, we come to the mid-90s and the government changed in Maharashtra. So the slogan was कि इस project को समुंदर में फेंकना है. Because media had hyped various issues. Media आजकल बहुत hype करता है, पहले भी करता था. तो लोगों के मन में वो आ गई doubt कि यार कुछ गड़बड़ है इधर. There was no गड़बड़ etc. to the best of my knowledge. But the point is the project stalled, and then the new government came, and then finally they cleared it in 2 phases. Now why I'm raising this issue is because this is controversial and it's very exciting to discuss it. Maybe some Shahi Saab will throw some more light because he was at some point trying to resolve these issues, and he tried very hard and he almost succeeded on the spot, but later on it was got resolved. And since he's here, I thought it would be relevant to mention. तो अब ये अमेरिकन्स जो थे वो आए कि भाई हम यहाँ इन्वेस्ट करेंगे, उनको चाहिए थी गारंटीड कैश फ्लो. सो वी डिड अ एनालिसिस, भाई बैलेंस शीट तो नहीं है, रेवेन्यूज़ क्या है आपके. तो स्टेट के रेवेन्यू उस टाइम पे थे ऑक्ट्रॉय, स्टेट का जो रेवेन्यू होता है फ्रॉम रजिस्ट्रेशन ऑफ प्रॉपर्टीज एट्सेट्रा एट्सेट्रा, एंड दे फाउंड दैट that particular state had revenues at that time equivalent to 6 months. अगर उन्हें पेमेंट नहीं की तो 6 महीने में आप उतना रिकवर कर पाएंगे और देयर अबाउट्स. बट दैट वाज नॉट वायबल. सो दे वांटेड अ स्टेट गारंटी. तो स्टेट गारंटी एंड सपोर्ट भी मिल गया उनको, और उनकी जो थी सिचुएशंस, कंडीशंस जो थी लेंडर्स की. Now it took a long time for people like in the electricity boards to understand that you're not dealing with a private sector chap. वो तो मीडिया है और मीडियम है. The point is you're dealing with his lenders, his banks, okay, and they need certain securities, otherwise they won't lend to the project. Now after having got the state guarantee, Mr. Ajay Shankar will join us shortly. He was Joint Secretary of the Ministry of Power, and there was an interaction between him and the late Mr. Gajendra Haldia, who was one of the great guys that I happened to be very close to. He was sitting in DE in the Ministry of Finance. तो ये झगड़ा इनका चलता रहता था कि, और वो तो खैर it was natural because he was looking at it from the point of view of DE etc etc. Finally ये काउंटर गारंटी जो थी ये गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया ने करी. हल्दिया साहब ने नेगोशिएट किया कि भाई इक्विटी पे हम फूटी कौड़ी नहीं देंगे, तुम्हारा जो डेट है उसके लिए हम काउंटर गारंटी दे देंगे, so that the banks get convinced. It took a long time, and I was the postman between the 2 ministries at that time. खैर वो project finalized हो गया, financial closure हो गया. Then we came to 1998. BJP सरकार थी, lot of action took place, and 98, 99, 2000 में the late minister, Mr. Kumaramangalam, brilliant man, he was able to pull through the beginnings of the Electricity Act 2001, which became 2003 later, the Conservation Act and the Regulatory Commission. अब उस समय the idea was that while we were evolving as a power industry to accommodate private sector, we needed to have a neutral party, and the neutral party had to be the Regulatory Commissions, both central and state. And they were to decide issues which are controversial, and the consumer, and also having public hearing etc etc. वो सब करने के बाद they have to decide these issues. Fair enough. So we then had the formation of the Regulatory Commission. I still remember a very fine gentleman, Justice Dwivedi. वो मुझे बताते थे कि हैरी ऐसा है कि हमारे पास दफ्तर नहीं है, स्टाफ नहीं है, एक प्यून दिया इन्होंने, और हमारी गाड़ी का जो बिल है वो पेट्रोल का वो एक डिपार्टमेंट में सैंक्शन करता है, तो हम नहीं तो हम साइकिल पे आते हैं. सर क्या बात कर रहे हैं, जस्टिस फॉर गॉड सेक. सो इट स्टार्टेड विद अ वेरी स्मॉल हम्बल एफर्ट, एंड दैट ऑफ कोर्स लेटर ऑन टर्न इनटू अ वेरी पॉजिटिव थिंग. देयर यू गॉट द रेगुलेटरी कमीशंस. तो हमारा पहला इंटरैक्शन विद द रेगुलेटरी कमीशंस वाज इन 99-2000. 99-2000 में एक्साइटिंग था. मल्टी, what is the word? Pankaj, you remember multi big projects को क्या कहते थे? Hirma and all that, Hirma and all? Mega projects. तो जितने छोटे projects थे उनकी तो दुकान बंद हो गई because it was announced कि only mega projects will get customs duty exemption etc, and the smaller project less than 1000 megawatts would have to shut down. Anyway, we had a lot of turmoil, lot of ups and downs, differences in state and central governments, differences in the various policy issues, etc. Then finally, 2003, Mr. Shahi was the power secretary. He got the bill passed with some preconditions, which were on the floor of the parliament, but passed ho gaya. And we had the Electricity Act 2003. I think 5th of June, Shahi sir, if I'm not wrong. I think 5th of June 2005. Right? Now, after having done that, there were just 3-4 points I want to mention. Bill was passed in good intention, excellent. The implementation was another cup of tea. So I am basically raising a couple of issues which should be perhaps the reason why we're looking at a new act. The first was that within 8 years of the bill being passed, open access and, if I may use the phrase, regulation of anyone over 1 megawatt was to be stopped or thereabouts. Legal terminologies can be looked at. But what the DISCOMs thought is that their paying consumers will go and they'll be completely bankrupt. For example, Maharashtra at some point in time with a turnover of 70,000 crores had about 60% of its revenue from 15% of its consumers who were paying. The rest was all subsidies and subsidization of agriculture and all that. So it became skewed. Now I won't go into details that there are excellent speakers going to speak about it, but the implementation started creating issues. The second was the issue of competitive bidding, which has become the favorite phrase. Now in the Act, you have 63, but you also have 62. And there are various judgments of the Supreme Court that 62 doesn't non-exist, but nobody is pushing 62. और उसकी history ये है कि 94-95 in ASCII, the late Mr. Shankar had a conference, which I happened to attend along with the whole bunch of foreign investors. And we got a letter from the California Energy Commission saying that we've tried our best to bring in competitive bidding, but it is impossible. Why? Because it's impossible to figure out the cost of the projects because they're all different. Hydro hai, thermal hai, plana hai, and you have no control on variable cost. So competitive bidding is a it doesn't really result in but Shankar Saab said, I want to protect the bureaucracy and the engineering community, so it has to be competitive bidding from the 3 C's. I don't want to go into details of 3 C's, but 3 C's is a main issue which still exists. So in 2010, NTPC said we want an exemption. It was denied by CRC. In 2011, we got the competitive bidding in Jan of Feb 2011. Now the good news was we got this, but the other news was, which is very interesting to have a great impact, is NTPC signed 48,000 megawatts of MOUs or papers with various states. So by the time the private sector got their act together and came to a DISCOM, they were told, sweetie, we don't want your power, we are full. हमें कोई ज़रूरत नहीं पावर की, तो हमने कहा अब क्या करेंगे? And why? We are cheaper, we are through competitive bidding. It doesn't matter. Paper is signed, NTPC is setting it up, that's it. This resulted in a lot of gold plating, so people allege, I don't know, a lot of, shall we say, inefficiencies in the capex maybe, but that's what derailed the private sector initiatives that were thought of while drafting 2003. I'm talking from the point of view of the private IPP, private investment wala chap. I'm sure government had its own views and we respect that. So for 4, 5, 6 years, you didn't really have any major private sector project coming up because it was not viable. Nobody wanted the power. You had done so much effort in bringing in the private sector throughout the 90s, and now you're sitting with the... Good afternoon, sir. So now you're sitting after the 90s in a situation where this is not happening. तो आपके पास PPA नहीं है. फिर उसके बाद एक और कॉम्प्लिकेशन आ गई कि जी आपका जो वेरिएबल कॉस्ट है कोल you will only get coal if you sign a PPA. You will not get coal otherwise. So Ministry of Coal, we had a long seminar with them, and that time the secretary said we're going to have premium sales of coal, etc., through a competitive bidding mode, which is great for the coal walas. And then the coal fuel became a problem. So neither I can get a PPA nor I can get fuel. I'm talking about the implementation issues that came up. Uske baad, in 2014, thankfully this government came to power, but a case going on in the Supreme Court, the Attorney General, Solicitor General, made a statement that the government wants to scrap all the coal allocated because they went back to the 1959 Coal Act or whatever, and they had no authority. The question then came, does the state have authority to allocate its resources, or does the center have the authority? So, us chakra mein somebody filed a PIL, and that result was that all contracts were scrapped, or allocations were scrapped, and penalty was put on those who were. So one of our members had a Minehead power plant. वो conveyor से कोयला जाता था. From the next day onwards, that koila stopped. He had to get coal by truck through Coal India 200 kilometers away. But the system said you can't ask for a price increase in variable cost because of this. Now, why this was done, I don't know. It was not a pass-through. So therefore, we had a whole bunch of interesting issues that came up in implementation. Act by and large was fine. The last thing I want to mention is that you had a situation where entities who were not regulatable were being regulated. They didn't have a license, but they were being regulated or guided or whatever. That is now being corrected in the new act. So the basic underlying issue was, are we going for market or are we going for regulation? As of now, we have a mixture. And I'm sure throughout this day the discussions will take place. कि हमें चाहिए क्या? And what is the most appropriate for the consumer? I don't want to go into further detail. There is a lot of exciting stuff we can discuss. But right now we are facing a very interesting situation where electricity is being regulated by SEBI, thanks to derivative trading. This controversy, we've been fighting it since 2004-05, कि भाई who decides spot or future market. Now thankfully under this government, and I think CE had a big role to play, we've got clarity. CRC is in charge for spot, and for futures it's SEBI. Having said that, we are also looking at some new initiatives, names. I was in the eminent persons group advising the Prime Minister in 2012-13. The challenges then are the challenges now. First is transmission. We do need more robust transmission. We need a system where perhaps we need to 20, 30, 40 people every month. Wo GNA is not in their DNA, so they are having a difficulty in figuring out ये है क्या. Some say कि इससे तो open access मिल जाएगा. Some say कि भाई वो capacity के लिए state ने पैसे भर दिए, etc. But I know that GNA originated from a sheet I pulled out of the CEA statistics, and the state was Punjab. The long-term allocation of Punjab was 3,000 odd megawatts, and during the paddy season, Punjab was happily going up to 7,000. So that was a glaring fact which we brought out, and I think CEA and the ministry decided to. We discussed GNA in 2012, but we decided to come out with it as a solution. So now it's like a membership of a club. You pay the subscription charge. Whenever you use it, you go there, you pay the money, and खाने पीने के पैसे देने पड़ते हैं. That's about it. But it needs more expansion and explanation, and the impact of GNA. The other very interesting phenomena for GNA was Vedanta in Orissa, where they had set up a captive plant for their aluminium complex, and the aluminium complex got delayed. So they had 2,500 megawatts of extra power, And they asked Power Grid, we want to evacuate it. And thanks to a guy called Mr. Soni, who was a brilliant guy, he then explained, okay, listen, this is a connection for your construction and all. This line is not geared up to export this power, etc. So this whole evolution of GNA started where W3 was created. I don't want to get into technicalities, but it was created specifically that power could be sold to the western region from Orissa, from a captive surplus. And of course, our most favorite subject is captive. ये captive है क्या? Captive का equity इतना होना चाहिए, उसका offtake of power इतना होना चाहिए. Captive में you must have this and that, and it's very simple in the act. This is setup. Captive is setting it up for a client. Setup का मतलब क्या होता है? Setup is not to build. Setup could be a structure. Setup could be anything. I'm sure there are enough rulings of the court on it. But setup के चक्कर में lot of people did a lot of things. Why is captive come up? One of the biggest captive players is sitting in the audience, so I'm moving my eyes away from him. Is कि भाई ये cross subsidy and additional charge और ये सब इसको how do we avoid it? So there was a situation in Maharashtra, the cross subsidy was 80 paise in 2010. Somewhere around the line between additional surcharge and cross subsidy around 2014-15 it was 3 rupees. So 2.5 रुपए की बिजली थी, 3 रुपए का ये था. The idea was to kill open access. Maybe discoms had a point, and I appreciate their point. कि भाई paying consumer चला जाएगा तो गाड़ी कैसे चलेगी? Then I used to explain to people कि यार unless you have a discom, how will you survive? Even a generator can't survive without discom. So we have to support the discom, but take care of their concerns. So I'll conclude by saying the basic challenge today is, does the new act fulfill our target and our requirements of market versus regulation? We have a market, but is it 10 rupee cap? Is it regulation or is it market? Thank you.
To everybody. Now next I would like to call upon Mr. Ajay Shankar to shed some light on the intent of the Electricity Act 2003 and how we are going with the evolution of the electricity sector.
First of all, a bit of apologies for being late, and I must thank Harry Down for giving me the privilege of being here and asking me to speak on the Electricity Act 2003. Now that really takes me back to a long, long time ago, and I was very fortunate in the sense that it rarely happens that you get the privilege of opening a file and issuing the last order regulation rule on it. And that was my experience with the Electricity Act 2003. It began with Mr. Kumar Mangalam, who was then the minister. He wanted a new law and he asked me as the Joint Secretary to work on it. And my first impulse was, why do we need a new law? And then of course we went on and had a law. And I first met Mr. Shahi, who was my boss there after 5 years, when I was asked to consult him about the draft of the next year. So that piece of legislation went through an amazing series of open consultations of this kind, and clause by clause and all kinds of diverse stakeholders. At one stage, Mr. Prabhu was the minister, and I was really feeling exhausted. So I said, sir, enough is enough. He said, no, never enough is never enough. If some improvement comes in, it's a good idea. So we kept improving. And then it went to the standing committee, where again it went through detailed consideration. And lots of recommendations came and we accepted most of them. Mr. Shahi was then secretary, he interacted with the chairman of the standing committee and lots of good ideas emerged. And I remember the cabinet meeting when the act was approved, Mr. Vajpayee was the Prime Minister, and he said, this is very unusual, you have agreed to most of the recommendations of the standing committee. Normally ministries don't take the standing committee recommendations very well. So the Electricity Act 2003 went through the kind of public consultation, detailed discussion, clause by clause, of a kind which rarely happens. And therefore, I have some satisfaction in the fact that it has stood the test of time well. Now, coming to some of the key issues. So I asked for how much time I should take, and I was told I could take as much time as I want. So I'll be a little generous in the usage of time. Because the framing of the Act was a major experience, and some of the issues which drove the discussion and led to certain results are still there, because one thing I find with age is that India doesn't change all that much all that easily. It remains more or less the same. So let me illustrate with one key issue when the Act was being framed. And that issue remains today, and Harry referred to it, this business of the market and regulation. Now, I will illustrate the point by a couple of anecdotes. So we were always short of money in government and short of money in the power ministry, and we wanted to create lots of capacity, and those days the private sector was not very active. And we have a very open society. Mr. Kumaramangalam was in Bombay, I was with him, and he met some people and who said, very easy way to raise resources, you just sell some of the existing assets to the private sector and take money, and you'll have enough money to build new plants. So he said, why don't we send Bhakra Nagar? So now being a good civil servant, I said, yes sir. Then I thought about it next day when he was more relaxed. I told him, sir, yes, you can sell it. You will get 5, 8,000, 10,000 crores. But Bhakra Nangal gives Punjab electricity 3, 4, 5 paise a unit. Now, whoever buys it will not give it at 5 paise per unit. So it will be the market clearing price, or whatever price he's given you. So do you think you can live with that, and Punjab and Haryana will accept it? Being a very smart political person, he said, forget it. Fast forward some years, Mr. Prabhu was the minister, and Enron was in great difficulty because they put up this plant, it was frightfully expensive. And the then chairman of Maharashtra Electricity Board told me, we made a mistake in doing the 700 megawatt unit, but we will honor the contract. But this 2000, there is no way we can handle it, and if you don't solve the problem in Delhi, then it will be a big problem, and it remained a big problem. So Enron came and told Mr. Prabhu that you bring in this open access, I can choose my supplier and give the electricity to anybody. And then he would have survived in the market, because the highest rates were in the best area. And he said, I'll use open access and sell to the very high-paying consumers who are paying 8, 9 rupees a unit in the best area, and I will survive. So Mr. Prabhu said, very good idea, let's have an ordinance, because I said the act will take time. Then after a few days he realized that this is not a good idea. So finally when the act was passed, there is a footnote for an exception saying that the best area is excluded. And it is excluded at the behest of civil servants of Maharashtra and the Maharashtra government and the political leadership, because the revenues from electricity were subsidizing the bus service in Bombay. So this happened when the act was passed, but if Enron had had its way, all those paying consumers would have gone and the Bombay bus service would have collapsed. So this whole thing of surcharge, additional surcharge, open access keeps confronting the hard reality that we have cross-subsidy in the act. And this is one area where we have discovered that legislation is not the solution. Legislation is a good intention. The solution has to emerge in the real world and in the political world. So the Electricity Act says that you should, first it should eliminate cross-subsidy. That was the original proposal. It was diluted to, you gradually lower it down. Then when we worked on the policies in 2006-07, very clear mandate by 2012, the cross-subsidy would be in the range of plus minus 10% or 20%. We are in 25, we are nowhere near that. Now why are we not there? It's not that easy for me to state regulators have been irresponsible and so on, but they all live and work in a political world, and in that political world, reduction or elimination of cross-subsidy at a rapid rate has, for reasons right or wrong, not been possible. So I remember when Mr. Shahi was secretary, we had a very major effort in getting states to decide that farmers will be charged for electricity some amount, will be progressively raised, and we will recover the cost. It soon became clear that it is just not going to happen. So the Electricity Act has a provision that when you want to give a subsidy, the state government will give the subsidy. Now that bit has worked, but it hasn't worked fully because the outstandings are large, and there are all kinds of attempts at taking a view by the Regulatory Commission so that the subsidy burden is a bit lower. Now, one solution which was attempted and has been argued for many years is that instead of subsidizing the distribution company or the electricity board, why don't you give the cash to the farmer and let him have a meter and pay what it costs? It's rationally a very good solution because the farmer will have an incentive to conserve electricity, he won't waste water, etc. And foreign aid agencies have tried pilot projects here and there. The idea first came up many years back. But again, the grassroots political reality in India is such that it has not taken off as yet. Now, why has it not taken off? Maybe the political class doesn't own it as a solution, maybe they have not understood it. Or what friends tell me, the farmers don't trust governments. So the moment you put in a meter and start collecting money, they're sure the government will delay payments to them and they will be difficult. I remember another, that period when I was Joint Secretary, we signed MOUs on reforms with every state. And one of the provisions was energy audit. Now, later on it turned out that, and Mr. Kumar Manglam used to have a way of describing it, the phrase survived for some time, the T&D losses were actually theft and multi losses. And that was because of misgovernance and theft of electricity. And the electricity sector has been a source in many states for all kinds of revenue collection, for the political state. Now once that is the reality, then all theory about good governance runs into a problem. And we have seen the governance issue get addressed frontally in Delhi when they privatized electricity distribution. And thereafter the losses have come down. There are other problems there of regulatory assets, but governance issue has been resolved. But if governance is the issue and the political class or the CM does not want to settle governance issues, then no amount of legislation or energy audit or schemes of the Ministry of Power will work, and they haven't worked. And the other problem in the electricity sector is that the political leaders feel that the tariffs should not reflect the cost of supply. Now, as long as they are clear that it should not reflect the cost of supply, then it is very difficult for the regulatory commissions to give rates which reflect the cost of supply. And that has been the experience of the last 22 years. And I am today feeling that we have reached a particular point of development where the political reality at the grassroots level may make possible a fundamental transformation. And why am I saying that? Because the whole concern has been on the weaker sections. So the LIG and people low income, to the farmers have already been taken care of. Now there we have the PM Surya Yojana, where everybody will get a solar panel and 300 units over the next 8 months. The AAP in Delhi and similar platforms in other states are giving 100, 200, 300 units over the next 8 months, practically free. So now it should not be difficult for a chief minister, for the political class, to say that the rest should pay the cost of supply. Because you've taken care of the poor. Then there is no reason why you should have multiplicity of slabs. And the small industry will pay this much, a small shop will pay this much, a big shop will pay this much. It's a maze. And no regulatory commission has moved towards removing the number of slabs on which tariffs are determined. So today I think there is an opportunity, provided we are able to communicate well enough with the political leadership, that you can get the regulator to give you the cost of supply and the tariff, do away with the multiplicity of slabs, and you are already taking care of the poor through the PM Surya Yojana and the other farmer subsidy. Because till tariffs move to reflecting the cost of supply, the cross-subsidy regime will stay. And as long as that stays, it is very difficult to do all the other rational things that the sector needs. Now there is one other dimension which needs to be understood, and which I alluded to in the example of Bakranagar. Now we have a historical legacy of tariffs, power plant by power plant. It's complex. Most economists will say it is irrational, it is anti-market, etc., etc. But the reality is that the DISCOM buys cheap electricity from very old power stations. Now if you accept the market principle, you will deregulate prices. So deregulation of prices means that the tariffs of the lowest tariff power plant, which is the oldest of NTPC, that tariff will go up to the market clearing price, which is bound to be 3, 4, 5 times. Now the moment you get to the market clearing price, you have economic efficiency, the right signals are going. But will the political reality of India today or 5, 10 years down the road permit a 4-fold increase in the wholesale price of electricity, or 2.5 times at one shop? It won't. And if it won't, then we have to live with this. So this uneasy compromise between pure market and regulated tariffs has survived for 22 years in the Electricity Act, and I don't see it easily going away. Just as free supply to farmers didn't go away, and for 20 years the Power Ministry had annual resolutions saying you must charge farmers tariff, but ground reality didn't make it possible. And I remember Mr. Shahi would recall that we were meeting the present Prime Minister when he was Chief Minister, and he made the point to him that give the village settlements 24/7 supply, charge them the urban tariff, separate feeders, and you'll get some solution to the distribution problem. He liked the idea, implemented it, and Gujarat DISCOMs have been financially healthy since then. Now, I'll again come back to the Electricity Act 2003 to one or two other dimensions. This open access debate was essentially a debate about market clearing price and giving generators access to consumers on their own rather than going through the DISCOM. And that's the whole open access regime in the existing law. So now the logical conclusion of that, and which was advocated at the time when the Act of 2003 was made, is that we adopt the UK model. The UK model has undergone changes in UK elsewhere, and it's a model which is very fashionable amongst reformers, and which is that why regulate it, the business at all, let there be competition at the retail end. After all, when I go to buy a ice cream or groceries, I can go to one shop or go to another. So separate the supply business from the wires business. So there is one common network of wires, and let anybody use that network to supply to anybody at a market-driven price. So it is competition, that's the way it should be. After all, we go and buy whatever we like from whichever store we want to buy from, and there is enough consumer choice. So that's a very attractive reform idea which has been there in the world and has been there in India. That separate supply from content, separate the buyer's business from the other business, and let the market work. And there have been any number of opinion pieces along these lines for a long, long time. Now this has worked to some degree reasonably well, say in England. But these are countries where demand has not grown. That came into business. First through thermal power plants, IPPs, and then through solar and renewable power. Now all that investment has happened at the back of a long-term PPA with a discount. That PPA has enabled the investors to raise money and to build up the plants. This is notwithstanding the financial ill health of DISCOMs, accumulated losses, because the market recognizes that at the end of the day, the distribution business will be bailed out by the state government or the central government. It will not go bankrupt and the lights will not go out. And therefore, the private investor will get paid sooner or later, just as NTPC gets paid sooner or later. Now, the moment the DISCOM ceases to exist and you have a completely deregulated market, then we need to think through very carefully as to how we will get private investment in generation. Because you look at the exchange prices fall to as little as 1.5, 2 rupees at times. They shoot up, there is extreme volatility. Now that volatility in market pricing will not give the market confidence to invest a lot of money in generation. So I think we need to consider this very carefully, that the comfortable power supply position in the country, the massive investment in renewables, is all based on the PPA with the DISCOM, with all its weaknesses. You do away with the DISCOM, I mean, I'm prepared to take a bet that the investment in generation of the scale that is required will not take place. And electricity is one sector where you cannot overcome shortages overnight. There is no way electricity can be imported from Europe and distributed. It has to be generated within this country. And new investment falls short, you have shortages. I remember, Mr. Shahi and I were there in Tamil Nadu. And the Tamil Nadu Electricity Board was saying, we are very comfortable, Mr. Shahi is arguing, please create more generation capacity. They didn't listen to us. And they had acute shortages. So this is one sector where a large reserve generation capacity is essential. And that can happen on the required scale only on the strength of a PPA with the DISCOM and all its weaknesses. So the Act in 2003 struck this balance, that you had open access, and which if cross subsidy goes, there will be open access, there is captive generation. So at the margins you can have a lot of play for market forces. But if you want a reliable supply, adequate new investment in generation and reserves in generation, then the DISCOM has to do resource adequacy planning, it has to project for demand and make arrangements for supply. The day a DISCOM stops doing it, we are looking for deep trouble 3-4 years down the road. And we have to persuade the political class, the regulators and the DISCOMs that spare capacity is a necessity. And the consumer is willing to pay for that spare capacity. We who are in power and in regulatory commissions assume the consumer is not prepared to pay. He will gladly pay more if you assure him that there will be no power cuts. And no power cuts means spare capacities for peak load when summer temperatures in Delhi are 43, 44 degrees, spare capacity when the distribution system is under stress, and you have unexpected breakdowns. Now the idea that there should be enough cushion is accepted in theory, but when it comes to taking decisions, Discoms shy away, regulators shy away from approving. Actually, the regulators should be demanding investment and PPAs for spare capacities. Instead of spending so much time and energy on looking at tariff filing, they should be spending more time and energy in seeing that the resource adequacy planning is adequate, enough investments are being made or PPAs signed to see that there are no power shortages. I worry about the power situation on the ground that last 8-10 years, the rate of growth and demand has been low for a variety of reasons. But as India takes off economically and moves towards a Viksit Bharat, this demand growth will suddenly rise. And if we don't have spare capacity, we'll have power cuts. And that's the last thing we should get, because one big achievement of this century in the country has been more or less free power cuts. So I have decided to talk of some larger issues which should make our understanding of the present amendments a little easier, I hope. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. IPPAI would like to express our sincere gratitude to Central Electricity Authority for the continued support and graciously providing us this lecture hall for today's workshop. Now, with a sense of gratitude, I would like to call upon Mr. Ghanshyam Prasad to do a keynote.
Good morning everyone. R.V. Saeed sir, Hari Dhol ji, Ajay Shankar sir, Pankaj Batra ji, Verma ji, and Mr. Gar, and I can see so many other dignitaries who are sitting off the dais as well, coming from Secure, IMA, Grid India, renewable companies, financing companies, and could be renewable, changed to renewable now, CRC, XCRC, SCRCs. But good to see the positivity in the room today on the very hot topic of in the power sector. I think we had been trying to, attempting the amendments to the Electricity Act for last, I think, 10 to 12 years as of now. So far not succeeded. This is our third attempt, and that is how the draft has been circulated with minimal changes as of now. Let me thank Hari Dhol ji for giving the perspective right from the beginning and bringing us historically to this era. Ajay Shankar sir definitely had given the perspective of earlier amendments and what is needed as of now. I personally divide the entire thing in three buckets. One is what I can do through the act. There are certain things which can be done through policies, rules, and third is there can be certain things which can be done through a regular practice and through the executive orders. And as my own experience goes in the reform sector for last 7 to 8 years, I tried all the three modes and tried to get the things done, either through the executive orders or through the rules and regulations and through the policies as well. Act, so far I have not succeeded, and this is my third attempt. Let us see if it gets through this time. There are issues, and what is the core of the problems we must try to figure out. What is the problem existing in the power sector? And then how do we really attack to these problems? And some of them, let me give you. One is we had been facing huge amount of challenges in the payment security mechanism, which we resolved it through the late payment surcharge rule, and probably I think that issues get settled almost, and the power sector has started seeing the positivity in the entire system. So this is one example of the reforms that can happen even without amendment to the Act. Now coming to why we need amendment to the Act, there are certain things which we cannot do unless the Act gets amended. I think all of you must have gone through it. We have kept it to a bare minimum. Let me again put this word, because I know that there are many challenges, many situations, many issues which we should have been brought in the amendment to the Electricity Act. But this time, consciously, we have tried to keep it at a minimum level so that at least we don't face much of challenge in getting it through in the parliament. Idea is that if we start getting it done on a periodic basis, that means something now which has more least contentious issues, which we think that it can really pass the time and pass the parliamentary process. If it starts happening, then we can keep on increasing the level of complexity, maybe in the next amendment or next amendment like that, and probably that can be one of the easiest what we can think of getting it done. It's almost similar to in each session you'll find that there are some amendment in the finance bill and nobody probably notices it, and things keeps on happening. So probably we also need to, in the power sector, we also need to be in that track so that, because it's a dynamic thing that is happening in the power sector. Things have changed, what we saw and what the conditions were in 2003, or maybe prior to 2003, something got addressed in 2003, some amendment took place subsequently, but still the things have changed. Could be energy transition, could be any other things that keeps on happening. But over the period of time that this needs to be addressed. So I think I'll not take much time today because I can see there is a chain of experts who have lined up and who has the past experience. Definitely we'll get enlightened from their past experiences in the amendment, and we would like to also hear from some of the stakeholders who are here what you think about it, and do you still feel that there are certain more changes which are easily can be done through the Electricity Act, and not going to the debate of whether it should be regulated, not regulated, whether it should be market or whether it should be PPA. So those debates can keep on happening, centralized versus decentralized one, captive versus IPP. So these are certain things which we keep on debating at most of the time, but restrict ourselves to what we have proposed, number one, and if something is which we have missed out, which you feel that which is urgently required, I'll request you all to kindly point it out so that we take note of it and we try to push it forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. Next, I would like to invite on stage Mr. R.V. Shahi to shed some light on the whole evolution of the sector again.
Chairman Central Electricity Authority, Mr. Ghanshyam Prasad ji. We have Mr. Ajay Shankar, former secretary in the industry department and for a long time, right up to I think the special secretary in the Ministry of Power. We have Mr. Pankaj Batra, Mr. Hall, Awad and of course Mr. V.S. Verma, and all the distinguished officers of Central City Authority, of public and private sector companies. I do see some of the regulators, various institutions, NGOs, and I must thank IPPAI that this event has been organized. Talking of private sector, I was just mentioning to Harin Hall that when private sector was almost non-existent or negligible in the power sector, his organization was formed and he is responsible for taking it forward for deliberations, discussions, policy advocacies during last, starting from early 90s until now, so almost 30-35 years. And this event is again an important discussion on a draft which has been prepared and forwarded now by the Ministry of Power for consultation, wider consultation. And the first session that we were expecting, and we have got a glimpse of this. I was fortunate to have been associated with this whole exercise much before I became Power Secretary, much before. In fact, even before, it was thought that something should be done to the Act. And somewhere in 99, mid-99 or 2000, a meeting was organized at the instance of the then Power Minister, Kumar Mangalamji, who I happened to know for a few months earlier than that, during some of the interactions, and that Mr. K.C. Pant presided over that meeting, and hardly 10 people in that meeting. And in that meeting, the consensus was, and that 10 people also covered some of the very eminent energy secretaries of a few states, and of course, Planning Commission and others. And in that meeting, it was decided that we can't do much in the power sector with continuing to work with Electricity Supply Act and Electricity Act, which had outlived its utility. So that was the issue that gave rise to giving this work of drafting, making drafts, consultation, etc., to the National Council of Applied Research, where Rakesh Mohan was heading that, and late Mr. Haldia was assisting him. Mr. Haldia's contribution when this act, when the bill was formulated, is significant. I had the occasion to interact with all stages of formulation of this act. There were 7 or 8 editions of the bill, and the process was the bill is drafted and corrected, new consultation like this happens throughout the country, seminars in Mumbai, seminars here, seminars there, and then also one-on-one interactions with Mr. Gajendra Haldia. I mean, when we are talking of the act, I thought it is proper to remember him. And that bill was done. Bill, of course, the consultant submits the bill, and therefore ministry has to go into this. Changes were made in the ministry. Sometimes we feel that a draft has been made and changes are made. All of us have this human weakness that we feel sometimes okay with it, sometimes not so happy about it. But there is a process. And the process must get the recognition that nothing is final. Even cabinet is not final. Parliament, you see the farmers' law went into problem. So therefore, we need to have maturity of initiating things, should be proud of making our contribution at various stages of development of a historic initiative, and feel happy about it. So that's how it went. And then when it was submitted, and that is the time some change was being made in the Power Ministry. I was invited to join the Power Ministry. I joined the Power Ministry in 2002. And that is the time this bill was under struggle at the Standing Committee. Late Santosh Mohan Devji was the chairman of the Standing Committee. Again, I happened to know him for a few years earlier. And then we established certain communication. And then Ajay is here. Ajay has been a part of that process right from the beginning, including from the fact that when it went to the Standing Committee, how we interacted. There was a change in the Power Minister's portfolio. Mr. Suresh Prabhu, just after my joining, few months later, he left. We had another minister. An impression was created. It was not okay that perhaps the new minister from the Shiv Sena is not very keen about having the act. And then I had to tell the minister that unless you make it very clear that you are equally committed to having this act, it will become a problem. So we had a meeting between the chairman of the Standing Committee and the minister. And minister did tell him that no, even with the change at the level of minister, we are committed to do this, and therefore it went. We could also introduce as power secretary or additional secretary or joint secretary individually, since this matter has already been given to the parliament. Officially we could not have done it, but unofficially we did make a few points with the chairman of the standing committee, and I must say, and I am grateful to late Santosh Mohandevji that he accepted all the 14, 15 points that we told him, that these are things which perhaps would find a place in the final bill that is discussed in the parliament. 84 amendments were made. That time BJP or NDA had majority in the Lok Sabha, no majority in the Rajya Sabha. So therefore a great deal. But before it was finally brought to the final stage of submission of the report of the standing committee, I think from the Ministry of Power, with our team, personally at my level, we had interactions with a few chief ministers about it. Why I'm saying is that the changes don't happen that way. It is not a case study of change, but definitely there are lessons of failures, successes, and all the opposition state chief ministers practically, all of them, important states. At the level of chief minister, we could establish contact, explain the rationale of this legislation, how it affects them in terms of the governance, how it helps them in terms of the governance, how it takes care of some of the problems, criticism that will continue facing if they continue keeping the grip on the whole affairs, and how this legislation and the process of regulatory intervention helps the administrative part of the government to get away from some of this criticism. And that is how finally we had wider acceptance. We had resistance, but as I said, that 84 amendments by the opposition, led by late respected Dr. Manmohan Singh. As I will remember, we met Dr. Manmohan Singh in the lobby of the parliament. I mentioned to him, he said, yes, I am quite clear, this is this will be a good act, but there are political issues. I have set up a team with Mr. Sibbal. He was a member of parliament and a very eminent lawyer. We met him, and finally we could persuade that 84 amendments gone, a few 3-4 changes we will make, not in that session of parliament, in the next session of parliament, unanimously this will be approved. It was approved. Those small changes I thought were good changes. And one of them important changes, one of those 3-4 changes was relating to rural electrification. Rural electrification will be the joint responsibility of the state government and the central government. That was a major thing. Another major thing is, and some of the regulators are here, and I very candidly discussed this matter in the regulators conference some time back, that how the parliamentarians were apprehensive. The regulators will defeat the objective and purpose of this open access. They will not do it. We were trying to tell them, why are you having this belief? And I must say, how right they were. And therefore, earlier we had given a discretion to the regulator to introduce open access. And the parliamentarians were saying, don't give this discretion. And that is why this amendment you might be seeing, within 5 years, they will bring this open access into practice up to 1 megawatt and above. But this history, this development is known to all. There are several regulatory gaps, there are several administrative gaps in implementation of the Act. Sometimes, this is also important to note, all of us are human beings. Sometimes our own failings and our own lack of appreciation of what we need to do, and we are not able to do for a variety of reasons. We want to explain them away to something else. We have not been able to do, we need a parliamentary change, legislative change. We have not been able to do, we need a change from the Ministry of Power. So therefore we have to be careful, because once we do that, we generate extra expectations, and if that does not happen, then our credibility of such thoughts and credibility of such actions get into question. Therefore, always we should be conscious of, is it something that really it is essential, or things which needed to be done have not been done, and therefore we are finding the problem. There are issues. On Electricity Act, there are issues like this. See, this act is so long, but we made intelligent inputs into this legislation, that we provided national electricity policy, tariff policy, and rural electrification policy as statutory policies. Our great friend, I have had a lot of respect, I continue to have, late Ashok Basuji, who I succeeded in the Ministry of Power and who became the chairman of the Regulatory Commission. He had a view that wherever we are saying that the Regulatory Commission will be guided, it is only guidelines. The Regulatory Commission may or may not accept. And that is an issue I raised with the Attorney General, Soli Soravji. We had long discussion, and Mr. Soli Soravji was very clear that what is the meaning of being guided if somebody is saying he will not be guided? So if the legislators, the parliamentarians say that you shall be guided, how can you say it is only guidelines and need not be guided? They are very clear. Still it remained vague for many years, and some of the regulators are here. They should understand and recognize this. Finally, this matter, thought, perception, appreciation, interpretation, explanation of different stakeholders of authorities could be different. Finally, in the case of Tata Power, I think Nariman bench made it very clear. And I must mention it to the Chairman CA, it is very clear if you read that judgment, that all these documents and from time to time these policy things have been issued, have the statutory force, just as any provision of the Act has the statutory force. So therefore, when we try to elaborate the Act, try to expand the Act, we must say that, why I was saying that these three important provisions in the Act are very powerful. Everything, you must understand, this is a concurrent subject in the Constitution. Electricity is a concurrent subject in the Constitution. I know, Ajay knows, and many of our people know how difficult it was to get this legislation. Coal is not a concurrent subject, but coal bill remained pending for 15 years. Did not happen. It was concurrent, and I used to tell those days that Electricity Act, when passed, will have its full force and full benefit only when coal bill is also passed. Because electricity generation of India, even today, is dependent to the extent of 60–70% on coal. But finally that coal bill, which was concurrent bill more or less at the same time introduced in the parliament, that lapsed in 2014, that this government, because of the coal blocks being cancelled by the Supreme Court, the government had to do something hastily, and an ordinance was passed and later on the bill was made. So therefore, see, the interventions of legislation on a concurrent subject like electricity is always faced with resistance from states. And in today's context of political configuration and political architecture, when you have different parties in different places, and even NDA and UPA have again different combinations, it is not one party, and therefore you have difficulty. And I think we know it very well, what it meant to get this legislation passed. If we had not done our groundwork for almost 6 to 8 months in meeting every chief minister, Congress ruled chief minister, non-BJP ruled chief minister, not have had them some sympathy for this legislation, also taking care of some of their burden, perhaps this legislation would have met the same fate. So is the question of also amendment. Remember, a series of amendments were tried a few years back, when our Mr. RKC was the Prime Power Minister. And then we had to go slow on that. So therefore we have to be very careful. So these three instruments give you enormous amount of leeway and degree of freedom. so long as you are not going against the objects of the Act. And I don't think the objects that they have been preamble, that they have been framed. And if you read the explanation to the preamble, don't only read the Act as has been handed over to you. Kindly read some of the supporting statements which went to the Parliament along with the Act. And if you read the preamble of the Act and the statement that went to the Parliament on this preamble and different provisions of the Act, you will understand that you have big degree of freedom in the legislation that you can work with your policy instruments. So one of my observations while going through, I have not gone into all details and comma and full stop of phrases that have been used in various proposed amendments, but I do feel that many of these proposed amendments adequately can get covered under your administrative jurisdiction, not contrary to the objective of the Act, through either electricity policy, tariff policy, or rural electrification policy. I was just hinting to, or I mean, Ghanshyam knows about it, but then I was just trying to tell you that one of the provisions in the Act is that in rural area, distribution is also delicensed. Generation and distribution is delicensed. So that's another point. We used to tell those days, and again Ajay is here, I'll say that who is the Sutradhar Ajay? We made a beautiful act. We made a good set of policies. But how do we move forward? And that is where competitive bidding guidelines came. If we had not made this competitive, imagine, if we had not made these competitive bidding guidelines, Section 63 would have been inoperative till today. So therefore, Act gives you that empowerment, but you need to act. So therefore, one is Act, another is statutory policies as envisaged in the Act, but that is not enough. Act is necessary but not sufficient. So therefore, when we build, this is a word I used in our, we used to have every Monday about an hour and a half from 9:30 to 11, secretary, our all colleagues, and then in one of the meetings I said, now many things we have done, where are the actions? We did that, and that has given rise to your 63. You started, you didn't get, I think all of us were party to this. I was guiding over not a private sector company, but a public company. VSCS was an institutions company. So, and therefore I was developing some IPP. The question is, entire 10-year period we couldn't bring even 5% of the capacity. Today, more than 50% of the capacity in generation is by the private sector. It has given you. We entered the century, we were just 97,000 megawatt. Today we have crossed 500,000 megawatt. So far as generation is concerned, Act is not standing in the way, policy is not standing in the way, and some of the actions that followed also are not standing in the way. So therefore, all these things, Act, policies, actions. Of course, if the states had taken a little more action, perhaps we could have got even more generation. But now I have written, I have finished an article. There's a long article. And there I am saying that the challenge is not generation. Challenge is how to increase demand. I have mentioned it to Secretary, I have mentioned it to Chairman CEA, that today issue is unless you create scope for more consumption of power, you have larger scale industrial developments, larger scale activities which consume power, today you have an issue. It's not an issue. Sometimes they explain away the stranding away of the solar system on account of transmission gaps, but I have examined it. Partially it is true. But partially also it is true that we are not creating sufficient scope for consuming power. When Adani took over VSCS, which I headed, and Reliance in between had taken it over, 3% was the growth of Mumbai. And for the last previous years, I asked the people, what are you doing for increasing the demand? We set up a few task forces. Now in the last 2-3 years, the demand has grown to 7 to 8% growth. So for previous 5 years, growth in demand was therefore EV, new facilities to people, motivating people to buy air conditioners, coolers, changing over from liquid fuel to even the cooking. So I think generating demand is a challenge now. So I'm sitting in the Central Electricity Authority, such an important hall with all the senior people of Central Electricity Authority here. I am telling you, creating demand for our 2047 per capita income is still you continue at 1500. Creating demand is a big issue. So action is an important issue. Coming to this set of suggestions or the amendments that have been proposed, my views are as follows. Let us get very critically and very dispassionate. What are the items which definitely need amendment to the Act and cannot fall into policy? What are the items which are coming out of our anxiety, but neither the policy is lacking nor the Act is lacking, actions is lacking? Take for example, you have done a beautiful drafting of cross-subsidy. Should reduce it. Whole sentence, even in a stronger way, is in your tariff policy. Tariff policy has gone to the extent of saying that if the average tariff is 3 rupees, it should be having a band of 20% plus and 20% minus, giving a figure. It cannot be more than 360 and it cannot be less than 240. If you see the tariff policy as we did, it has given that figure. So therefore, kindly examine all these provisions with reference to these tests. Do they really require to go to the Act? Because I told you that making Act, then second you are taking the right that belongs to you to the Parliament. Tomorrow if you want to make that amendment again, you have to do the Parliament. If you have to make amendment in your electricity policy, if you have to make amendment in your tariff policy or rural electrification policy, you don't have to go to Parliament. And going to Parliament is a big hassle. This type of an Act definitely will go to the standing committee because all states are involved. So therefore, so far as this particular attempt or initiative of making a few amendments, they are good amendments. They are good intentions of the amendments. But do they need necessarily to go to the amendment to the Parliament? That is the issue that we need to find out. And at a small task force can examine into this. Why not here? Why not here? As I mentioned to you, that today, if you want to privatize distribution, Act is not standing in the way. Today you want to give generation, distribution, everything to in the rural area particularly, to anybody, nothing is standing in the way. So therefore, I will give a report, a brief report. Ghanshyamji, I will give you a brief report on some of the things that we have talked about, that also cursory way. Maybe I will re-examine some of the comments also I am making. Not necessarily they are very fixed views. Nothing can be fixed views. And therefore, we will definitely like that these things are examined. Another point is that I went into drafting of these things. Some of the things are too detailed, too technical. Central Electricity Authority is also a statutory provision in the Act. And a lot has been said. When we said that generation distribution could be given to anybody, means D-license, we have put a rider. That guidelines on this, on technical safety and technical requirements will be the authority. Now, only for this you don't go to parliamentarians. You have it. You have it. So, distribution is the only thing which is D-licensed today, and great deal is already good. Another point that is very important in that 132 kV and above is the jurisdiction of transmission. Okay. Most of the large industries draw power 132 step down to 33 kV or 132 and bigger. So if you try to classify the industrial consumption, you will find that A and B item, A, B, C analysis, A and B item will fall to 132 kV. distribution companies of the state have nothing to do with universal service obligation in them, because it does not go through their network at all. Neither they have to develop networks, nor do they have to maintain, nor do they have to do the meter reading, nothing. It happened because extraordinary sympathy was there with the distribution company then. But 2002, 3 and now 2025, that extraordinary sympathy was misplaced somewhat then. Today it is totally misplaced. Technically, they do not belong as their consumers because they don't use their infrastructure nor their services. So therefore, they definitely go out. So within the Act, so many things you can take out and open up. So I think these are some of the points I thought I must share with you. And I will also put in writing some of the things to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for a beautiful analysis of the amendment bill versus the Electricity Act 2003. Now next I would like to call upon stage Mr. V.S. Verma to shed some light on his experience.
Good afternoon, everyone. Respected Shri R.V. Shahi, Shri Ghanshyam Prasad, Shri Ajay Shankar, Shri V.K. Garg, Pankaj Batra, Mr. Harry Dhol, Mr. Bajaj, Mr. Goyal, members of CEA, and other participants from CEA and outside. I must thank IPPAI for organizing this event and giving me an opportunity to speak. It is important, the important points, the chronology of the history is already covered by Mr. Dhol. Some important points have been covered, very important points have been covered, Mr. Shahi and Ajay Shankar. In my viewpoint as well, we were short of power, now we are short of demand. Therefore, I would suggest to Chairman CEA that while projecting the demand, they must interact with the industries and other consumers and ask for their plans, future plans, for increasing the power consumption, for increasing the production, etc. So that today the installed capacity as well as the demand, they are highly not related. We have 500 gigawatt of installed capacity and about 200 gigawatt of demand in the country. As Mr. Shahi has also told, that the small amendments to Electricity Supply Act 1948, 91 did not do the job, and there was a need for a greater amendments, and organizational and infrastructural change were required, and that is why the Electricity Act 2003 came. I do recall the struggle which was made by Secretary Power, then Mr. Shahi, to get this amendment passed. I was there in one of the meetings when Geeta was chairing. We were in the Parliament Annexi building, and the Parliament questions were being discussed. Mr. Shahi mentioned to Mr. Geeta that we have to go to the Parliament for Electricity Act. Mr. Geeta's remark was at that point of time, आपको इलेक्ट्रिसिटी एक्ट पास करने की ज़्यादा जल्दी है क्या? Sir, would you recall this one from Mr. Geeta? But then, in spite of all these resistances, Mr. Shahi coordinated and the whole Ministry of Power as well, and the Electricity Act was passed. Earlier, more than 60% of the rural consumers did not have access to electricity. Now that situation is absolutely changed. Towards the end of the last century, it was recognized that the power sector in India, the governance, institution structures, etc. were overhauled, and the quantum jump was not possible. And that is why with the Electricity Act implementation of 2003 have changed the situation. The Electricity Amendment Bill today, I will focus on the main areas which have been suggested. This is aimed at strengthening the power distribution sector through financial discipline, healthy competition, and increasing the efficiency, etc. This is a very progressive step forward. The amendments are focused for future vision of Viksit Bharat 2047. Future ready power sector. The amendments will also fully protect the subsidized tariffs for farmers and other eligible consumers, poor consumers. The state governments are allowed to continue these subsidies under Section 65 of the Act. The amendments are focused towards healthy competition between the government and the private companies under the strict supervision of the SERCs. I have a feeling that the state regulatory commissions have to enforce the legal provisions of the Act very sincerely and truly. All this would result in the healthy competition, better service, greater efficiency, and choice of consumers for the supply of electricity. The amendments will allow competition on performance, turning monopoly supply into efficient and accountable and the consumer-friendly service. While giving this choice, I have one doubt that the calculation or the prescription of the wheeling charges of the distribution system would be a more difficult area. Transmission system is defined. Every day the distribution system is changing, and therefore one has to really work out how to go about working out the wheeling charges, which the state regulatory commissions have to do. Competition, you know, that will reduce the cost of electricity supply by improving the efficiency and accountability. The shared network usage will eliminate the duplication of distribution lines and substations. Our experience has been that under the monopoly supply model, the T&D losses and the commercial losses have increased, and they are merged into one head with inefficiencies and theft, etc. The subsidy portion of the farmers and other consumers would include the burden of the social service as well as the cost of monopoly of the operations. Shared network usage would finally bring efficiency, reduce losses, and lower the burden of the subsidy of the cost. Cost-effective tariffs will bring out the debt cycle, enabling the timely maintenance of the infrastructure and give the reliable service. But then, there are few issues in this one. The late payment surcharge was mentioned by Chairman CEA. I feel that in some cases where the regulatory assets are being formed, we are not allowing the distribution companies to get their tariffs. At the same time, when they are unable to pay the charges of the generating companies, we put the late payment surcharge. It is not justified. The Supreme Court in the latest judgment of the BSCS have mentioned this. This 18% late payment surcharge is too high when the bank rates are very low. The cross-subsidy elimination specifically for the manufacturing industries, railways and metros with improved competitiveness and job creation, etc. will do this. The hidden cross-subsidies are proposed to be replaced with transparent and budgeted subsidies under the Section 65 of the Act. At the same time, it protects the farmers and the poor strata of the society. Under the proposed bill, SERCs will fix the cost-reflective wheeling charges. All have to pay these charges, whether private or public companies. The collected charges will then be fairly distributed amongst the licensees based on the network ownership, which is a difficult task, of course. This will ensure the financial viability of the utility. Now, government DISCOMs will continue to operate along with the private licensees in a regulated and level playing environment. Competition will reduce cost, improve efficiency, service quality, etc. Each distribution licensee could cover all consumers when SERCs define the distribution area, etc. along as per that provision. The regulator set the cost-reflective tariffs for all distribution licensees. Universal service obligations applies to all licensees. This means every supplier must serve all consumers in its area without discrimination. Additionally, distribution licensees serving the subsidized consumers, for example farmers and poor households, receive state subsidies. USO will be applicable to all consumers, including farmers and domestic consumers, other than large consumers specifically exempted by the SERCs. SERCs enforce the performance standards, reliability, voltage, outage, etc. The bill also allows SERCs, in consultation with the state governments, to remove the USO for large consumers more than 1 megawatt who are currently eligible for open access under the Act. These large consumers can procure their own power through open access without DISCOM support. A distribution licensee as supplier of the fast resort will provide supply to a premium over the cost of supply if needed without incurring the loss. Thus, the framework ensures the fair competition, full coverage, and the financial viability of the licensees. The proposed Electricity Council, this is another area, important area of the Act. The proposed Electricity Council will serve as a consultative body to build policy consensus. At the same time, SERCs will continue to determine the tariff, issue licenses, and regulate the interstate activities. This is a very difficult area. Even today, there are state ministers, power ministers conferences there. Still, the things are not done. I wonder how this council will work and how the Act can be implemented. I think I'll stop here and suggest that some of the points Mr. Shahi has said, that all the things need not go through the Act. This is correct, and the things can be implemented through the policies and the guidelines which the government makes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I would like to request Dr. V.K. Garg to please shed some light on his experience.
Thank you very much. Good morning. I heard the beloved speakers, and I also read it beautifully. And I find that in substance, going through the earlier two drafts for the amendment, and the current one, and the totality of the issues involved, the federal issue, that is the concurrent list of electricity, and the governance on the top of it. Central and state governments be on the same page on the issues of common interests aimed at achieving objectives of Electricity Act 2003 as enunciated in the Statement of Objectives of the Act, and further clarified, crystallized and spelled out in the preamble to the Act, which is all-inclusive and a very comprehensive paragraph which spells out guidance on what to do, how to achieve, and what could be the possible contours it defines, and also gives a hint on where the government has to act on policy, procedures and actions. And what is given in the preamble, having been looked at, what is required is the compliance of the directives in the statement and the preamble, and the governance being an icing on the cake will settle the issues of the power sector and will put the whole thing on the path of growth once the demand, which is low, picks up and the demand catches up with capacity, so that there is a balance between the existing supply and demand, and the way for future investment and make the future investment attractive and leads to the growth of the economy and the growth of power sector. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Pankaj Batra, to come on stage and shed light on his experience.
Thank you. Feels good to be back in CA after 7, and of course meet a lot of my colleagues, including Chairperson CA, who also happens to be from my college, and of course Harid Hall, who I'm meeting after a long time. We were associated with IPPAI right since '91 when generation sector was opened up. Respected Shahi Saab, also, everybody I've interacted with here since many years, Verma-ji and Ajay-ji and Dr. B.K. Garg. And of course, a lot of people in the regulatory commission, as well as in members and some of the directors of POSOCO and I mean grid controller now, and of course many others I see in renewable sector and PFC and railways. So great to be here in front of you. I'd just like to point out a few things only, not too many, because a lot of details have been talked about. One of the good things about is that it gets discussed threadbare, and then I think the decisions which are taken last much longer than what is done, imposing from the top. For example, China actually doesn't go too much the way we do. A lot of it is driven from the top. And I remember in the CRC, right, where I was 2009 to 13, a delegation of Chinese officials, about 10 to 15 officials that come, Ramasa was also there that time. They came to understand regulation from us because they didn't have a proper regulatory setup there. Because they felt that this country had done well in regulation. In fact, any foundation which is built through discussions always lasts a long time because it takes everybody's views into consideration. I wouldn't like to talk too much about the details of this act, but I'd just like to point out one thing, which is I think we are, as
as good as the best in the world in terms of technology for generation and transmission. And there are a lot of technology companies in distribution, but it's not really taken off in distribution. That's where I think the challenge lies, and that's where every time, whenever the amendment to the Act comes, it gets stuck, because that's the single thing about distribution reforms due to which it doesn't get passed. So I think there has been some lesser number of changes now, or alternative ways of dealing with distribution. What has been mentioned is that you give open access to the people from the industry so that they can get power at whatever rate. Issue there. If you remove the subsidizing consumers, then the subsidized consumers' rates will rise. So that's something which I have a little different view, although the intention is the same. But and of course what is mentioned is you have a uniform tariff for all consumers and give subsidy directly by the government. Direct subsidy just like we have in gas cylinders. I think that sort of thing would work, because already worked in the gas cylinder business. And you also won't have then people, and you have people who are identified as people who require subsidy. Whereas some people feign to be poor consumers, whereas actually they're making a lot of money. So I think this is something which slightly different way of handling it. And if you have a uniform timers and they get direct subsidy into their accounts, it will also not distort competition, because it distorts competition if you have subsidy. If somebody wants to get cheaper from outside because of subsidy, then it becomes costly. So this is something which I just wanted to say. I'm not going to say much more. I think there's lots of clauses which are waiting to be. So most of the clauses are very good clauses. So I think I'll leave it to the question answers. Thank you.
We have heard all the eminent speakers today. I think it's time to open up to the audience. I would request maybe one by one you can express your views on the amendments. Instead of going and running through the entire presentation, I thought it would be better if you can straight away go and give your views.
Sir, can we provoke them by showing the slides?
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
That'd be better to provoke them, otherwise they're all in stupor.
But it will take a lot of time anyway. So maybe we can start with this. Might be on.
Thank you, Ghanshyam. So actually, after hearing the speakers, I tend to agree with some things that, firstly, what I have found is that right from the beginning in the Electricity Act, if you see that provision has always been there that we have to progressively decrease the cross subsidy. And then as mentioned, even in the electricity policy, tariff policy, that has also been, reinforced. So just putting it that you have to have a cost reflective tariff, whether it go through and people will still follow that or not, and what is the punitive mechanism, like if the regulators again, don't, of course you have tried to have that provision that, the action can be taken against the regulators, that provision has been put that if they don't follow, I don't know the exact wording, but my only thing is that intention, that's why I would say that the Electricity Act was very well framed, has really stood the test of time, that even through 22 years, not many amendments have been there, and still, things have been working. So that's my brief comment that, and like Mr. Shahi has said, that we can have a look at some of the amendments, whether we really need to put, or whether we can still go through, the regulations or a policy framework, if that is possible. So I think that is it, and then maybe later on I would go through it. Thank you.
I think let's stay on the cost reflective tariff. Any other views on the cost reflected clause which are there in this? Then we can go to the next topic. There is one.
Get a mic, please. Gentleman here. Mic goes away. Yeah. Please introduce yourself. Thank you.
Myself Ujjwal Mondal from RDC Limited. Sir, in the cost reflective tariff, one portion is also there, like cost reflective wheeling charges. So for maintaining the networks for the distribution companies, like existing government discoms, the network maintenance and the upgradation of the network will be properly reflected in the wheeling charges, because it can be a very difficult thing for the discom companies, existing discom companies, how to plan with the future network expansion. So that's think new players who are coming to the system, so they are exact. Firstly, they will not know about their exact consumer base. So who will decide the consumer base? Things can be done for the future. But that transition period can be problematic for determining the cost reflective wheeling charges. So that is my question.
See, let us first understand why this was put in there. Most of the regulatory commissions, they were not allowing the capex, which is supposed to be done in the distribution segment. And that has led to these distribution network, in the state of distribution network as of now. So how do you really counter that? So that is how this provision has been brought in, so that at least the weight, and what does it include? It includes the capex which has already been approved by the regulatory commissions. So any investment that you do, you are supposed to get it approved in the ARR, and that is how the mechanism works. So for the next investment, the next year, or if you have MIT for the next 5 years, the entire capex gets approved earlier, right? So that you can keep on doing, and that gets now inbuilt into this. So the objective behind this particular amendment is this one.
No, that sounds like this. Issue belongs to tariff policy. That is possible. So, and tariff policy, the document, as act that has been now set right. So therefore, if there is any inadequacy in the tariff policy, according to which is none, but maybe we can go through that, then that is the document which we should have. And that is an easier one. That you see, it's tied in a different way. Taking it there in the parliament is the issue. Because the moment you take things to parliament, in a way, indirectly and directly, that the issue belongs to them. That's the point.
When a regulator fixes a tariff, it's based on data provided to him by the distribution company, etc. I don't know how many of you mentioned that happens in a load dispatch center every day, and what the hell is going on. Unfortunately or fortunately, in connection, we happen to be having access to a lot of these places, and we found something very interesting. There is no question of the SLDC being sensitized to profit and loss. He only is bothered about energy. And very often you find that they take decisions which cause a loss. For example, there is a wind power available. I'm talking about a specific case. It's 8,000 megawatts yesterday. Today it's 300. So immediately we ramp up and do all those things. In the process, there is no accountability. I'm not going detailed into it, I can, but because we're talking general discussion. Problem वहाँ से शुरू होता है. But you can't blame the SLDC because his job is to do other stuff. So a lot of losses to the state distribution companies because of wrong decision. For example, cheaper generations available, but thanks to ABC reason, fixed charge, whatever, he has to schedule a thermal power plant instead of a renewable, etc. Or because a fixed charge has to be paid, he is told that you have to run the thermal power plant for whatever reason. So there is no way a regulatory commission, can go deep into this to figure out कि हाँ loss कहाँ से आ रहा है. He only is got to be based on the data given to him, and the data given to him, nobody's at fault. It's just the way the system works is given to him, and he has to act accordingly. But the losses arise at the grassroots, and we need to find a way. I don't know if we want to do the act or what do you want to do, where the SLDCs need to be sensitized. कि भैया, what you are doing is going to cause a loss, and therefore someone somewhere along the line may mildly hold you responsible. I just wanted to bring this up because we are working on some artificial intelligence, and we find that there's a huge amount of losses. In one particular case, we saved about $150 million in one particular case by just making the AI come in. The AI only works if you have data. Without data, there's no AI. And getting data itself was like, discovering America. It was just fantastically. But we got it, and now we are able to save a hell of a lot of losses that would otherwise come out. And the other thing is, I'm not blaming the SLDC. Please note, I'm not question held accountable, but they're not sensitized to economics. They're sensitized to load management, and they do a damn good job. So when the regulatory commission is told, sir, ye mera itna loss hai, what can the regulatory commission do? Okay, I'll not allow you 5%, 10%. Then you get in the case of Delhi regulatory assets of some God knows how many thousand crores. Luckily, the Supreme, but it's not in the Act. There is no such thing as regulatory assets in the Act.
I just want to respond, Gachanti, on what Shahi Saab mentioned about the legality of policy, because the Supreme Order which came is not very clear whether it's legal or not, a policy. But if you put in the Act that the policy has to be followed, then it becomes law. I think there is some...
No, Pankaj, I think I made my point when I was saying that this was the case. I in fact mentioned out different view. At that time we took the view of Attorney General. But Attorney General view is a government view, let us say. But Nariman bench has made it very clear, so don't be under any doubt. It's very clear that these policies are as effective, they have the force of law. We can discuss it.
Someone else, you want to have a reaction? आप कुछ कह रहे थे? Mic for sir.
On this clause 61G.
No, बोलिए.
Yeah, please go ahead. Because railways and metro is one thing. Now under Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, regional rapid systems are being developed, basically to reduce burden infrastructure, burden on tier 1 and tier 2 cities. Daily mirror regional rapid transit system has already been
Mic. आगे रखिए ना mic.
So and similarly Delhi, Alwar, Delhi, Panipat, Karnal, Lucknow, Kanpur, and in other states also these regional rapid transit systems will also come. So this railway and metro railways are okay. Railways, metro railways, and regional rapid transit systems. There should be also because basically for commuters should avail these services. So RRTS should also because when this act is passed, then it will be very to change. Let us initiate from the beginning itself. I will even try to also.
वो वाला कैमरा वो टर्न होगा, ये वाला इन पे ही रहेगा, वो वाला टर्न होगा इनकी साइड.
Here it is that you will be cost of supply.
Yeah. Because RRTS function is same as railways and metro railways.
Good afternoon, sir, and thanks for the opportunity. So my point is again related to the same cross-subsidy thing.
Introduce.
I am a Joint Managing Director, Indian Energy Exchange. So my point is again related to the same point. In fact, if we see, tariff policy has been trying cross-subsidy and also cross-subsidy surcharge for quite a long time. But here are we, after 2 decades of act, nothing has changed. In fact, all these things we have seen only going upward. Now again we are saying, after so many years, that we need another 5 years to bring it down or to eliminate it. That too in one shot. We are not talking about any trajectory. eventually what will happen is, when we will have the regulators and those who are responsible for reducing it, they will keep the level same or probably increase it for next 4 years, saying that in the 5th year only we have to act. So if either we have to reduce this time, we should now at least after 2-3 decades we should bring it down to 2 years, or at least we should give some trajectory that every year it has to be reduced to some extent.
20%.
Some otherwise result is going to be the same what we have seen in so many years. Thank you.
Right, I think Mr. Harizal would remember in electricity bill, this was already, but later on it has been diluted. In version 3, 4, 5, 6, this was there, this clause.
It was opposed by the late Madam Jayalalitha of Tamil Nadu of removing it. Then it was brought down to.
Mr. Rohit, we have to reduce say 20%. First year you reduce cross subsidy 20%, second year 40%, 60, 80, and then 5th year 100%. Then it will work.
Actually, the word progressively reduces mentions that. Progressively.
But the regulatory commission could not, as Mr. Syed mentioned, that it would be failed at.
So they may reduce 1%, 1%, 1%, and then 96% in the last year.
But as the same provision was there even in the existing act.
Right.
It is there. All subsidies will be.
मतलब solution क्या है? करता नहीं है, regulatory commission करता नहीं है. क्या करें? देखिए कोई हार्ड नंबर यहाँ देना मेरे ख्याल में यूनिफॉर्मली टू ऑल दी स्टेट्स प्रोबब्ली मे नॉट वर्क एंड आल्सो and the decision that was taken earlier as well that we don't put a hard number, we have to put it 20% or 10% or 30% may also be a slightly a difficult proposition. So what is done in the act is you take a enabling provision and then through the other mechanism you try to enforce it, and that is what I was trying to say, that okay, we have act enablers, you can do it through the server also telling, and then through that we can try to impose upon it. Here also the idea is similar, that it's not that we have not achieved things in the cross subsidy. If you find the earlier data and the present data, probably the things have averaged a lot, but the idea is that how do we really achieve to the cost of supply. You must have seen in the policy, the recent drought policy, electricity policy, we have said that okay, why don't we start increasing from the down and then reduce from the up as well, and then that is how the concept of minimum tariff is coming in the policy. We say that every consumer will have to pay at least some minimum quantity, some minimum tariff, which is with respect to the cost of supply. So at least 50% of the cost of supply will have to be paid by the consumers. If consumer doesn't pay, at least the government has to pay for it. You cannot fix a tariff of 1 rupee or 1 rupee 20 paisa or maybe very as low as anything, and then you say that cross subsidy by the government will only be with respect to 20 paisa. No, it has to be with respect to the cost of supply. So that is how more focus is being given on the cost of supply, cost reflective tariff, and if some commission doesn't do it, then punitive actions that can be taken against those regulatory commissions as well. So that is how the law is being strengthened, and if you have gone through and tracked the regulatory asset judgment, then it is very clearly bringing out that there is nothing called regulatory asset. It has to be liquidated and no more regulatory assets is to be brought in there. That means it has to be the cost reflective tariff that needs to be there. Right? Regarding the cross subsidy, when it comes to railways, we always keep on talking in terms of the power as well. Because in railway as well, you have a cross subsidization between the passenger trains and the freight of railways, right? And we are the worst affected people because 80% of our coal is being transported through the freight, and we subsidize your passenger train. Power itself is going much higher because of this cross subsidization. So this debate will keep on happening, where to do and where not to do. But putting a hard number, I think we should avoid in the act. We should have a enabler and then try to do it through the other mechanisms, which is already there in.
Can we at least mention this, that it could be progressively reduced as per the trajectory provided in the tariff policy or something like that? See, what is happening? In RCO we have given 29 to 43%. Similarly here also 20% first year, some percentage next year, and gradually it can be done.
I have a question. So can I play the devil's advocate? Can someone tell me what is cost of supply actually in a discount?
Yeah, it is generation plus transmission plus
सर actual data क्या है?
exact determination. Of course, will have to be seen, but it's basically that.
I agree with you in theory is that, but is it really the cost of supply? Because remember, it's a cost plus distribution company, and the data that is put up to the commission is designed in such a manner that nobody can do anything. Now, sir is going to.
I'll stop you here.
Devil's advocate, right?
Because we are aware about the issues of presenting the ARR before the regulatory commission, state commissions, right? It has been definitely subdued, and it has never been truly reflected when you really go and get the tariff done. And that is how the state of affairs in the distribution utilities is very, very bad as of now. And I think Vivek will tell us. I think it has already crossed 7 lakh, right? And we had, seeing this particular precarious conditions, we formed a government, group of ministers has already given some recommendations of revival of these distribution utilities, and these recommendations are under deliberations as of now, and we need to we need to do some actions particularly on that. But for that, we need not do something on the act, but that can be done through other means as well.
Actually, this is happening. I am listening since last 30 years. Every 10 years it happens. There are so many debts and basically inbuilt inefficiencies have to be taken. There are a lot of inefficiency. Private distribution companies are running in profit sum. Why not discounts? State-owned discounts. It means there is some that we are not tackling the core issue. I think.
What is the core issue according to you?
Core issue inefficiency, then corruption. Biggest thing is corruption.
ये दोनों चीज मैं एक्ट में तो नहीं लिख सकता हूँ.
Act में नहीं लिख सकते, but at some point of time we have to take hard decisions. We really want to improve the efficiency.
वो आ रहा है, वो that amendment is there in the 91 section.
सर आप बेचारे रेगुलेटरी कमीशन के पीछे क्यों पड़े हैं सर? वो उसको तो वही मिलेगा डेटा, अब आप डंडा लगाओगे पास कर देगा, उसको क्या फर्क पड़ेगा?
For example, regulatory commission doesn't implement so many provisions of the act. No action is taken.
Cost reflective tariff. What is the actual tariff of customer? That's all. उसकी बात कर रहा हूँ. मैंने देखा है ना कैसे कुक होता है डेटा.
I think the energy stack, that's the philosophy of this. Energy stack is to get the data right from the bottom to the top. Once that comes, I think that problem will be solved.
That will take some time before we get into the energy stack. Okay, let's change the topic. One suggestion.
So let me come to a new topic.
Can CA specify some normative numbers for the distributing companies in this regard?
That is what I said, sir. There are huge recommendations that has come up through the group of ministers, though it has not been made public as of now. But that takes care of a number of recommendations which will try to address all these issues. Sir.
So, on the electricity council, so having worked in GST council and involved in launch, so the GST council, there are newspaper articles coming that's on the lines of a GST council, but the GST council came through constitution amendment, and it's a sort of a binding kind of a recommendation, whatever is done in the GST council. But the way, it's a very loose kind of a amendment that is being proposed, and it just looks like a talking shop to me. So until and unless at least you should have it little more, at least like to have for the directions that of whatever decisions are taken in the electricity council, they will be at least for the guidance of the commissions or the government. So something, it has to be a little more powerful. So it is just, otherwise it looks like, okay, I remember that there was some like between the state ministers and the union ministers, one decision was taken that the agriculture tariff will also be minimum of 50 paisa. But like that decision never got implemented. So similarly, like if you want to have some teeth, so it has to be little, more powerful, and at least you should say that whatever decisions are taken, they will act as a guidance. I know they cannot be made mandatory as of now, but maybe it's the thinking is that let the beginning be made and thereafter we can move forward.
I think I'm glad you mentioned this 50 paise because I was witness to this. Mr. Kalpanath Rai was the minister, and the World Bank wanted कि 50 पैसा की announcement कर दो. So he said, no, I'm not doing it. What is actually happening is, there is a fixed charge. There is no meter in the farmer's premises. उसका fixed charge है 5 horsepower, 10 horsepower, उसकी sanctioned है. He can use the 10 megawatt. But the point is, he's putting in 25 megawatt. So 15 megawatt extra because he's scared about the availability of power, etc. And the situation has slightly improved now. But this was so with the result, 15 megawatts, 15 kilowatt hours extra is being consumed by the farmer, which is unmetered.
I think इसका जो main philosophy है sir, we just want to make a beginning of this because right now we don't have a particular forum wherein we take the consensus view of all these states. It's completely missing. You have a forum of regulators where at least all the regulators meet. But where is that forum, legal forum, wherein all the states sit together and come to and discuss a particular issue and come to a consensus view? So the idea is that why not to create that kind of a forum where this kind of a situation, and because it's a concurrent subject, isn't it? So many a times what happens is there are divergent views of the states, and if not discussed properly, it gets struck somewhere or the other. So if this kind of a mechanism is there, of course I can understand that more powers need to be given, it can be made mandate, the decisions may be made mandate, etc., etc. That may evolve over a period of time depending on the usefulness of this kind of a forum. But right now the thought is that this forum will have, and this forum is going to be at the highest level. So probably whatever the decision that is taken and such type of a forum, it's almost, I can correlate it with European Union, wherein at least all the countries, they have their representative, and whatever is decided in the European Union is a consensus. There will be some differing views as well. It's not that it is decided with 100% of the people agreeing to that particular concept, but whatever decision is taken is by and large gets implemented. So similar type of a concept is being planned in electricity segment as well, so that at least we have a forum wherein all the states sit together, deliberate, find out a solution. Maybe the initial proposition may or may not be entirely accepted. It might get accepted with some amendment, but with a larger acceptance within the country. So that's precisely the idea as of now, sir. And I think it's a good move.
Well, that is what I said, that I think if the idea is to have a beginning made, so I think that's a good beginning.
Sir.
But maybe I think वो सोच लीजिए थोड़ा सा कुछ अगर guidance.
वो मैं लिखा हूँ sir, I have noted. I think some clip can be provided. Yeah, maybe I'll again touch upon Rohit, because certain things were being mentioned about the regulation, deregulation, and the role of power market. Is the amendment provided right now under 65 is okay, or do you want some more changes?
I think that is looking good service, because earlier there was nothing in fact, and still all the institutions are working. So there is nothing which is stopping. So there is nothing which is stopping any of those things. And we really do not see any gap.
That is how most of the time I say, if nothing is written, you can do whatever you want to do.
And one thing which we have covered, and which is about NTSD, CFD contracts. I think this was one of the missing link. A lot of confusion whether it is derivative. Now putting it NTSD plus CFD, probably it makes the things clear.
Thank you. Any other point? Yeah, please go ahead.
Namaskar, sir. It's on. I am Bharan, sir, from CEA. Sir, you were saying that the control room SLDC is not sensitized so far, but in fact they are following the MOD, sir, immediate dispatch, non-diagram dispatch. So they are already being sensitized. Their main job is to balance the load and demand only, load and generation. So they are knowing, sir, about the cost details and all. And the second thing is about the farmer subsidy. You are saying that
in MOD you don't look at fixed cost.
it's variable cost.
It's only variable.
So this regarding the farmer case, sir, farmer you are saying that subsidy can be given. What is the impact, sir? Suppose farmers start paying that what are the cost of supply. What will be the impact, sir, on the goods available in the market? Is produce. subsidy, whatever it is now. So I think the cost will go up.
Amendment is that you don't, not that the farmers will actually, food will start becoming more expensive. They will get it but another way, which is already done in the case of gas cylinders. Direct subsidy given directly to the account.
Pankaj,
State governments will have a problem
in giving this direct subsidy because now they can afford to give the subsidy later or with delay, etc., or not to give it at all. So that, so therefore, this will not be approved by the government, the state government at least. We need.
So the amendment also is given upfront subsidy in advance. If that's the case, then they have to do it. It's law.
it was there in the existing act also.
I'm not sure if it's the existing act, but anyway, it's something, at least an enabling provision. I mean, whether it's enforced or not is another matter altogether. Then you put anything in the act and it won't be, that's another thing.
The qualifications that have been put, the requirements under section 66 amendment suggested. These qualifications require the regulator to be a financial expert in addition to regulatory economics. Now, how many regulators we have who have this capability? Because normally, one who is not made a chief secretary in this state is put on this line.
It is not mixed up the political issues.
The main issue is the qualification of each regulator.
So let us change the topic. So, sir, there is a clause in present Lexicate that the DISCOM has to give the 15 days notice in writing to the consumer in case of any disconnection. Because in the 2000 there was the electromechanical meter, so there was a now 2 days there we have the prepaid smart meters, and we are disconnecting the consumer light on day-to-day basis, and in case of non-payment or in case of low balance. So whether there is a need to change this clause as per the present situation, because there is no amendment is proposed in that clause. Thank you.
Are you really disconnecting?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes.
बगल में आपके बैठे हैं मीटर मैन्युफैक्चरर.
Yes, there were two disconnections.
नहीं देखिए it's still the control is with the consumer, right? If you pay, it automatically gets connected to you. So you pay and get connected. How does it matter? Why do you need a notice for this? I mean, I'm just debating.
Actually, there was a legal guidance sought earlier also from Ministry of Power, and they said the meter giving advance notice warning will be treated as a legal notice.
तो वो तो आप दे रहे हो, 7 दिन पहले ही आप बता देते हो कि आपका इतना बैलेंस बच गया, आपका डिस्कनेक्शन हो जाएगा.
That don't have the legal value because the DISCOM has to give in writing in 15 days before.
कहाँ लिखा है राइटिंग? राइटिंग लिखा है. वर्ड राइटिंग है.
You want to tell them verbally? क्या चाहते हैं आप?
Whether I am saying whether this clause has to be.
नहीं, I mean ठीक है, इनकी बात समझ गया मैं. यदि राइटिंग में लिखा हुआ है, then I think that needs amendment because now you have electronic modes, you have different modes as well. So all these modes can be treated as a notice.
Yes,
Understood your point.
About this code, what is Ghanshyam, what is mentioned here is the standards of performance of distribution licenses, I believe. We already have a distribution code, so that can be used for because of course this is the right thing to do. It puts it in the act. So we already have a distribution code which can be, which is made by a CA.
So the problem right now is probably the distribution code which is already there is not. I think I don't see any state who has implemented in true spirit, which is supposed to be done because it needs a number of timelines to be adhered to. they need to perform within that timelines, and if they don't perform it, then there has to be a penalty clause.
No, I agree that it should be here.
The idea here is that can we have a broad framework and the state at least have these minimum criteria. So it will guide them to the minimum criteria. Beyond that, if somebody wants to improve upon it, they can as well do it. Yeah, you can keep moving. From manufacturing side, there was a manufacturing enterprise definition that has been added. Is it okay for you? No issues on that. Any thought on the captive generation?
Hi sir, I have a question from Amber.
Please speak on mic.
Yeah, hello, am I audible?
Yeah, you are.
I am Kulbhushan Kumar from Amber Energy. So I just want to I have a comment on the section 9 which has been proposed. As per the section, appropriate government has given the power to define the requirements which are to be met by a capital generating plant. So as per the definition of appropriate government, it seems that different states have different regulatory provision in relation to that, or different requirements to be qualified as a capital generating plant. So, but we should think, but my personal view is there should be uniform norms for all the states. Because like there will be plants which will be like supplying.
Can you come forward, please? Because we can't see you and. Now you're looking nice. Thoda और आ गया, just something.
So there will be many plants which will be supplying electricity to different states, and there will be different norms, so it will be difficult to comply with that for such kind of plant. So what I personally think, there should be a norms which should be defined by central government, it should be adopted by state government.
ये आपकी बात सही है, लेकिन है क्या कि सबके हर एक स्टेट की फाइनेंशियल कंडीशंस अलग अलग हैं। हो सकता है किसी स्टेट में एक छोटा बंदा भी कैप्टिव में जाना चाहेगा, हो सकता है उसके पास लार्ज इंडस्ट्री नहीं है, फॉर एग्जांपल नॉर्थ ईस्ट में है। देयर कुड बी अनदर स्टेट लाइक महाराष्ट्र एंड ऑल, देम माइट लाइक टू restrict it to a slightly a larger one. So I mean, you should not have a uniform criteria, and that's the thinking what is coming out here. Number one. Number two, if somebody is making appropriate government means here those captive which will be catering to more than one state, probably those will come under the central government guidelines. Other than that, if some specific that some captive is there which is consumed right in the same state itself, probably those will be governed by the state policies. That's perfectly fine. I don't see much of a.
Sir, इसमें एक थोड़ा fear है. Suppose some industry want to set up captive power generation, so then government may think that ये तो हमारे हाथ से निकल जाएगा. We are getting good tariff, so it may be counterproductive also. Unless we define some conditions that who can build captive power plant. If we leave on the state.
आपको एक छोटा सा example railway से ही देता हूँ मैं. There are so many states who have reduced the railway tariff. Why they have done it? Because you were going away from that, right? So open, I always tell to the people is open access is another form of distribution license, right? Because they have created a kind of a competition in the minds of a distribution licensing. Because they have now a fear that my consumers, paying consumers will go out of my clutch and I'll lose my cross subsidy. So they try to now rationalize their own tariffs, and this is forcing them. And this, the moment this thing gets more and more apparent, then probably you'll find that the cross subsidy, the problem of cross subsidy will start reducing further and further. This is a key problem which the electricity sector is facing as of now. So the idea, the entire construct of the amendment, you will find that some way or the other we are trying to see that how do you really minimize this gap. The moment you do that, probably nobody will like to move out. The moment you come as close to cross subsidy, or as close to cost of supply, probably nobody will be. Maybe even 10% or 5% higher also रहेगा ना, तो भी कोई वहाँ से जाने की कोशिश नहीं करेगा. ठीक है ना? तो ये सारी प्रॉब्लम की जड़ वहीं पे है. So I think we are trying to address that.
So basically, sir, what you are contemplating is killing the open access market. You don't want open access market. That's what.
No, absolutely no. What is required is, my objective is not open access. Let me again tell you. My objective is to give 24/7 reliable supply to the consumer. Open access एक कैप्टिव क्यों जन्म लिया? बता दो मेरे को.
Sir,
क्यों लिया बताओ?
Sir, this debate is very subjective because.
It is not subjective.
Sir,
I have lived through 33 years of my experience in power sector. I can tell you that it is because the distribution licensee were not able to supply electricity to the consumers. They said, can I have my own industry? Can I have my own power generation units? Can I get better reliable supply from my own power plants? And that is how the things grew up. And we promoted. Electricity 2003 में situation क्या था हमारी? उस समय करीब 10% से 12% या 14% तक का हमारा शॉर्टफॉल होता था. दैट मींस गिवन था कि उतना इलेक्ट्रिसिटी मैं नहीं सप्लाई कर सकता.
सर तभी जनरेशन भी नहीं था ना. अभी
वही तो कह रहा हूँ.
जनरेशन भी है,
अभी
ओपन एक्सेस भी है.
बिल्कुल सही है. अब क्या है, हम दोनों कंपटीशन लेके आना चाहते हैं. क्यों लेना है?
कंपटीशन कहाँ से आएगा? आप एक हैंड में आप बोल रहे हो कि मैं डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन कंपनी को बोलूंगा तुम इसको बढ़ने ही मत दो, खत्म कर दो, फिर तो आप सारा चीज खत्म कर दो.
किसको एक मिनट किसको
बेसिकली आप ये बोल रहे हो कि मैं डिस्कॉम को बोलूंगा कि तुम अपने क्लच से उसको बाहर जाने मत दो. दैट मींस इन अ वे व्हाट आई कैन फोरसी फ्रॉम द स्टेटमेंट यू मेड जस्ट नाउ कि मैं उसको क्लच से निकलने नहीं दूंगा और इसीलिए मैं ओपन एक्सेस कम कर दूंगा. ओपन एक्सेस का कभी भी इंटेंट ये नहीं था कि तुम उसको बाहर
कम करने की बात नहीं कर रहा हूं.
आप वही इंटेंट वही आ रहा है ना कि आप बोल रहे हो कि
आप चाहते हो कि कॉस्ट ऑफ सप्लाई और क्रॉस सब्सिडी बढ़ा रहे हैं.
आप स्टेटमेंट बोल रहे हो कि दो डिस्कॉम आप बना रहे हो, आप एक पैरेलल डिस्कॉम बना रहे हो. आई एग्री विद यू. दो पैरेलल डिस्कॉम आपने हमको एज अ ओपन एक्सेस सप्लायर आपने डिफाइन कर दिया कि वी आर अ पैरेलल डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन. बट आप बोले कि तुम्हारा गला घोट देता हूँ उसके बाद तुम सांस लो. ऐसे कैसे हो सकता है?
गला घोटने की बात कहाँ आ रही है?
मैं बोल रहा हूँ सर, इंडिया में अगर 3 CEA बन जाता है तो मैं किसकी बात मानूंगा?
एक मिनट सुनो. let us stick to this problem. You said open access कस्टमर को हम हटा रहे हैं. ये भावना कैसे आ रही है?
सर ये तो इसलिए आ रही है ना क्योंकि आपने अभी स्टेटमेंट दिया कि ओपन एक्सेस को कैसे मैं कम करूंगा. ऐसे मैं कम करूंगा कि आपको बाहर नहीं जाने दूंगा.
आप गलत बोल रहे हो. मैंने क्या कहा? मैंने कहा मैं क्रॉस सब्सिडी को कम करूंगा.
सर क्रॉस सब्सिडी तो होगा ही नहीं ना. जब मुझे आप जाने ही नहीं दोगे तो क्रॉस सब्सिडी आएगा कहां से?
मैं मना नहीं कर रहा हूं. आपको जाना है जाइए. हो सकता है
सर मैं कैसे जाऊंगा जब आप मुझे जाने ही नहीं दे रहे हो? आज के डेट में रियल लाइफ एग्जांपल लीजिए सर. कितने स्टेट का आप देखिए, महाराष्ट्र देखिए, कर्नाटका देखिए. आपको आप ARR में टैरिफ ऑर्डर में आप एक्सेप्ट कर रहे हो कि वी आर अंडर 4000, 5000, 6000 crore loss every year, but still I am giving you lower tariff from open access just to kill open access. That does not mean कि you are creating a competition from a discom perspective.
देखो, ओपन एक्सेस वाला जाना चाहता है अपनी उसको यदि वो वायबल लगता है तो चला जाएगा.
सर वो तो आप केवल ऑप्टिकली बोल रहे हो ना कि जाना चाहता है. आप जाने ही नहीं देना चाहते हो तो क्यों जाना चाहेगा?
नहीं ऐसा नहीं है. इस स्टेटमेंट वाज अगर एवरेज कॉस्ट ऑफ सप्लाई से अगर थोड़ा बहुत ज्यादा भी हो तब भी नहीं जाएगा वो नेचुरली. इस स्टेटमेंट
एक मिनट. There needs to be a clarification. Communication gap ये है कि regulators in these states have given lower tariffs to industry to come back from open access to the grid. That's the point he's making.
That's a competition, no? This is what I'm saying.
It's not a competition, sir. If you are at the cost of taxpayer, you are creating a competition. That is not a competition.
No.
That is not a logic of competition.
अभी भी मेरे को आपकी बात ये समझ में नहीं आई कि आप कैसे कह रहे हो कि ओपन एक्सेस को हम मना कर रहे हैं. ओपन एक्सेस बिल्कुल मना नहीं कर रहे हैं. ओपन एक्सेस क्या है? ओपन एक्सेस को जाना चाहता है चले जाए.
सर लाइव एग्जांपल.
नो कंज्यूमर इज मैंडेटेड कि आप जाकर के इसी डिस्कॉम से लो. ऐसा है क्या?
सर बहुत से डिस्कॉम में ऑलरेडी ऐसे प्रोविजंस बना रखे हैं कि
क्या प्रोविजन है? चलो बताओ यार.
हाँ मैं बताता हूँ. जैसे कर्नाटका की बात करें, कर्नाटका में ऑलरेडी स्पेशल इंसेंटिव स्कीम निकाला. उसमें बोला आप 2 साल तक बाहर नहीं जाओगे. सेम मध्य प्रदेश ने निकाला कि आप ओपन एक्सेस में.
इससे फायदा किसको हुआ? एक मिनट. स्पेशल इंसेंटिव स्कीम जो लेके आया इससे फायदा किसको हुआ?
सर फायदे की बात नहीं है. आपने एक सेगमेंट तो किल कर दिया ना जो आज के
सेगमेंट की बात
सर्व कर रहा था. ऐसा तो नहीं आप कॉस्ट ऑफ सर्विस पे वो पावर दे रहे हो. आपकी कॉस्ट ऑफ सर्विस आप एक्सेप्ट कर रहे हो कि मेरी 7 रुपए की सर्विस है बट मैं आपका पैसा फ्री में है मेरे पास, मैं आपको 5 रुपए में दे रहा हूँ. ये कौन सा लॉजिक है?
5 रुपए यदि कॉस्ट ऑफ सप्लाई पे वो दे रहा है और 5 रुपए यदि आप एज ए कंज्यूमर आपको एक्सेप्टेबल है तो आप रुकोगे. नहीं एक्सेप्टेबल है तो आप जाके चले जाओगे फिर भी.
सर तो बेसिकली आप बोल रहे हैं कि मैं डिस्कॉम को कोई इंसेंटिव नहीं दे रहा हूँ अपने रिफॉर्म करने के लिए. डिस्कॉम ऐसे ही मतलब पानी में पैसा बहाते रहे, कोई दिक्कत नहीं है, आप इनएफिशिएंट चलाते रहो, मैं 2 रुपए की पावर दूंगा आपको।
नहीं, मैं तो पानी में कहाँ पैसा बहा रहा है?
सर आप अगर एक्सेप्ट कर रहे हो यार,
आप कहाँ से हो?
मेरा
कहाँ से हो?
मैं सर दिल्ली से ही हूँ।
दिल्ली से किस चीज़ में हो? कहाँ काम करते हो?
नहीं, मैं काम नहीं करता हूँ सर, मैं एक जनरेटर हूँ।
क्या जनरेट करते हो?
सर सोलर और विंड जनरेट करता हूँ सर।
हाँ,
सो मैं बोल रहा हूँ कि मेरे जो कस्टमर हैं आज के डेट में, जैसे मैं सप्लाई कर रहा हूँ किसी स्टेट में, लेट्स टेक कर्नाटका और महाराष्ट्र, मैं अगर उसको सप्लाई कर रहा हूँ तो पहले तो आप डिस्कॉम में मुझे फंसाते हो कि सारे अप्रूवल, जो कि किसी ने कभी देखा भी नहीं हुआ। आप अगर डिस्कॉम को सप्लाई करते हो कोई अप्रूवल की ज़रूरत नहीं है, लेकिन आप सेम टाइम पे ओपन एक्सेस में जाते हो, आपको 2000 अप्रूवल चाहिए। ठीक है, हम वो भी लड़ रहे हैं, कोई दिक्कत नहीं है। द प्रॉब्लम इज कि आप जो ये डिस्कशन कर रहे हो कि मैं आपको एक पैरेलल डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन कंपनी समझ रहा हूँ आज के डेट में, बट मैं आपको कोई अप्रूवल की अथॉरिटी नहीं देता हूँ। आप भी बोलो कि पैरेलल डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन लाइसेंसी की तरह सारा अप्रूवल की
अथॉरिटी, आपको डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन लाइसेंसी बनना पड़ेगा ना। एक्ट ऑफ प्रोविजन यही तो लाया जा रहा है कि आप यदि डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन लाइसेंसी का पूरा चीज निभाना चाहते हो तो निभाओ, लाइसेंस ले लो और करो।
But it is not cost optimized structure for everyone, na sir. There are smaller companies also.
Let us not mix up the things. Okay? ओपन एक्सेस एक रूट है और एक ऑप्शन दिया हुआ है कंज्यूमर को कि यदि आप जाना चाहते हो आप जाओ ओपन एक्सेस में, यू हैव योर ओन बिजनेस, यू कैन यूज वायर्स, पे फॉर द वायर्स, पे फॉर द क्रॉस सब्सिडी, व्हाटएवर मैकेनिज्म हैज बीन फिक्स्ड देयर, राइट? इफ यू वांट टू गो टू द रूट जो कि आप चाहते हो कि मैं एक जैसे ये डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन लाइसेंस है वही फैसिलिटी मेरे को मिल जाए, ओपन एक्सेस को भी मैं लेना चाहता हूँ तो आप लो, बट देन यू टेक अ लाइसेंस because in that case you will be subjected to all kinds of regulations.
So मैं लाइसेंस के पॉइंट पे नहीं हूँ, मेरा बड़ा सिंपल पॉइंट है सर। अगर आज के डेट में मैंने कॉस्ट ऑफ सप्लाई निकाला एक स्टेट में, तो आप उस कॉस्ट ऑफ सप्लाई से नीचे कैसे कोई इंसेंटिव स्कीम बना के पावर दे सकते हो? मेरा ये पॉइंट है। क्या ये प्रोविजन आपके एक्ट में नए में ऐसा मैंने कोई देखा नहीं है प्रोविजन जिसमें कि ऐसा आप उसको बेसिकली आप हिंडर करते हो कि नहीं बॉस यू कैन नॉट टेक दिस काइंड ऑफ थिंग।
ये कहाँ पे हमें कॉस्ट ऑफ सप्लाई से नीचे कोई पावर दे रहा है क्या? आई डोंट थिंक कोई भी दे रहा है। आई थिंक यू आर मेकिंग अ थियोरेटिकल स्टेटमेंट। आई एम सॉरी, I would like to have a practical case. You can come to my office. I'll have a detailed discussion with you. But please come with a very specific. I am open to all queries.
I will come with a specific example with a quoted ARR.
Absolutely, आप लेके आइएगा उसको. I will be more than happy to examine this.
Thank you.
इसमें prescribed by the appropriate government. So I mean, all the capital may, because ultimately whatever the definition now will settle to the Supreme Court. So why don't you put, I mean, as prescribed by the central government here? I mean, just my thinking, because anyway, now what is happening is based on the Supreme Court judgment, definition of the captive. So still again, if you put appropriate government, then again there will be confusion that what is captive, what is not captive.
So confusion तो अभी भी चल रहा है। आप देखेंगे अभी कैपिटल रूल्स हमने अमेंड किया है, अमेंडमेंट की गई हुई है, तो वहाँ पे भी कुछ क्लैरिफिकेशन और इसको रहता ओपन अप करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं हम लोग। तो होपफुली दैट शुड एड्रेस।
देख लीजिए, मतलब इसको एक बार मतलब मेरे को ये लगता है कि क्योंकि अभी भी सुप्रीम कोर्ट काफी कंफ्यूजन इसमें रही है, अल्टीमेटली द थिंग्स हैव बीन डिसाइडेड बाय द सुप्रीम कोर्ट। एक वो जो पॉइंट था जैसे कॉस्ट ऑफ सप्लाई पे एवरीथिंग इज गोइंग टू डिपेंड, जो दौल साहब ने पॉइंट किया था, तो ये डेफिनेशन तो ट्राई कर ही सकते हैं कॉस्ट ऑफ सप्लाई।
ठीक,
हाँ
दैट इज फेयर पॉइंट
सर। कॉस्ट ऑफ सप्लाई तो बहुत बड़ा सब्जेक्ट है, 2 दिन की कॉन्फ्रेंस है।
और आगे चलो, ये सब मेन ब्रॉड इश्यूज सेक्शन
43 में जो आपने लिखा बी में, प्रोवाइड नॉन डिस्क्रिमिनेटरी ओपन एक्सेस टू इज नेटवर्क टू अदर डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन लाइसेंसी इन देयर एरियाज ऑफ सप्लाई ऑन पेमेंट ऑफ बिलिंग चार्जेस without any cross
आपको कोई
subsidy.
सुन नहीं पा रहा है सर, आप माइक्रोफोन
अच्छा,
यूज कर लो यार।
अच्छा, इसमें एक वर्ड यूज कर दिया जाए विदाउट एनी क्रॉस सब्सिडी, कहीं ऐसा ना हो कि उसको क्रॉस सब्सिडी चार्ज करना शुरू कर दे।
ये क्रॉस सब्सिडी का फंडा ऑलरेडी डिफाइंड है, किस स्टेट में लगेगा किस में नहीं लगेगा। इट इज ओनली दो डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन लाइसेंसी है, राइट? दोनों डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन लाइसेंसी को ऐसे भी क्रॉस सब्सिडी देना नहीं पड़ता है। यदि ये बंदा दूसरे की लाइन यूज करता है, इट्स ऑलरेडी केस इन द मुंबई का भी केस देखोगे, एक ही एरिया में दो डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन लाइसेंसी है, दोनों एक दूसरे के लाइन्स यूज करते हैं और जितना यूज करते हैं उसका बिलिंग चालू करते हैं। सेम थिंग हैज बीन ब्रॉट इन।
ये काफी डिस्कशन में आ रहा है कि जैसे at present most of the distribution companies their fixed charges are approximately 50 to 20%, whereas in practice actually their distribution fixed charges are around 40 to 50%. So actually in the process it's also sort of a cross subsidy and the bigger consumers gain out of it. So I don't know, like जब ये है tariff setting में है, if some mention can be made कि that progressively they can also try to set the tariffs where fixed charges are corresponding to their actual fixed charges of distribution, something of that sort. I don't know. It must have been discussed, I'm sure.
दो कमेटी बनी थी, आपको याद होगा सर। There were two committees. One was to examine the number of slabs that people have in the different distribution utilities. Second was to examine exactly this part of it, कि fixed charges कितना हमारा aligned है power procurement से। And it was found that you are very right that right now the fixed cost is hardly 15 or 20, किसी में 10% भी है, wherein if you see with respect to the procurement of power, then it will be somewhere around 45 to 50 or 55%. So that recommendation we had given, and that committee very clearly gives a recommendation that gradually it should move towards that area. Some state have done it. एक्ट में लिखना चाहेंगे, पता नहीं।
यही वाले सेक्शन में तो लिखा जा सकता है। जब आपने भाई व्हाट आई एम सेइंग, जब आप कॉस्ट रिफ्लेक्टिव टैरिफ की बात कर रहे हैं, उसमें ही सम मेंशन कैन बी मेड कि भाई जो टैरिफ विच आर सेट अप।
इसमें देखिए दो तीन चीजें हैं सर। उसी कमेटी का रिकमेंडेशन ये भी था, आई थिंक आज भी किसी ने बताया ना कि स्लैब्स अब क्यों चाहिए, कि अब कंज्यूमर है, ये छोटा कंज्यूमर है, बड़ा कंज्यूमर है, आप स्कूल्स को अलग कर दिए, इंस्टीट्यूशन को अलग कर दिए, सब कुछ अलग कर रहे हो, क्यों जरूरत क्यों है? You make it very more scientific, isn't it? You have 440 पे जिसको सप्लाई कर रहे हो उसको एक टैरिफ लगा दो, 11 kV पे कर रहे हो उसको एक टैरिफ लगा दो, 33 kV वाले को एक टैरिफ लगा दो। So let there be uniformity and this will be based on the scientific principles as well. तो ये भी एक रिकमेंडेशन है जिसमें स्लैब रिडक्शंस की बात कही हुई है, कैन वी हैव वोल्टेज वाइज टैरिफ। एंड जो कॉस्ट ऑफ सप्लाई की बात चल रही थी, कॉस्ट ऑफ सप्लाई कैन बी ट्रूली कैलकुलेटेड बेस्ड ऑन इफ यू रियली हैव द वोल्टेज वाइज। सारे जितने कंज्यूमर हैं 440 पे दे कैन हैव द सिंगल टैरिफ, 11 kV 33 kV जितने भी आ रहे हैं। सो उस तरह का भी सोचा जा सकता है। बीच में दिल्ली में ही किया था इन्होंने, आई थिंक दैट वाज आई थिंक 2014-15 के आसपास में टैरिफ ऑर्डर आई थी, उसमें स्लैब को रिड्यूस किया था एंड देन लिंक्ड इट टू वोल्टेज बेस्ड ऑन दैट कमिटीज रिकमेंडेशन, बट इंसिडेंटली उसको फिर रिवर्स कर दिया कुछ। एनीवे
बट उस सर उसमें fixed charge, can we say, can we put as a general principle on the lines of bulk tariff? Because that's what happened in COVID. In COVID time, all these were running at 30-40%, 30% drop. But the fixed charges were the same for the bulk producers, whereas for retail it was not. There was nothing. Now of course they started putting. But if it is put in the same, on the fixed charges put in the lines of bulk tariff, so you don't specify anything. If you say that in accordance with that, that will help. I just think.
Yeah, there are two ways of dealing this. Either we go for the tariff policy, जहाँ की detailing हम कर सकते हैं इसको, या tariff regulations में आ सकती हैं। These are the two places जहाँ की आप detailing कर सकते हैं इसको। यहाँ पे आप, you are right कि we can have some kind of enablers. Some kind of enablers can be thought about it. मैं देखता हूँ sir. Let me see how this can be incorporated.
Sir, I want your guidance since you have enough experience and now you're running that association as well, I think. but आपको पता है ना सर, आप जानकार हैं। ये बताइए कि कॉस्ट रिफ्लेक्टिव टैरिफ जब रिग होता है डेटा,
उसका क्या कर सकते हैं? सॉरी, आई एम टॉकिंग प्रैक्टिकल सर।
देखिए डाटा का तो सिर्फ
नहीं, टाटा नहीं सर, कोई नाम नहीं
तो सिर्फ पॉसिबिलिटी जो बार बार कमीशन में होता है कि भाई you will have to have benchmarking and yardsticks and some sort of 5% leeway here and there can be given, but other than that you have to rely on your cost accountants or chartered accountants. So whatever audited accounts are there, that is why the truing up mechanism is there. So when you are truing up, so you are just basing the जो भी audited statements and they are correct. I think very difficult to go beyond that actually.
Next, इसमें comment on this. Yes, I have comment. अगर bulk consumers को open access is okay, but most of the time open access is restricted due to non-availability of transmission and distribution capacity. So in that case, suppose bulk consumers more than 1 megawatt, they are not able to get through open access. उसमें जो designated distribution licensee है, they should not charge premium charges. कि आप वहाँ से नहीं ले रहे हैं से, तो बिकॉज ये बड़ा काउंटर प्रोडक्टिव हो जाएगा और ये होने जाने वाला जब तक मैं इसमें क्लियरिफाई नहीं करें। और अच्छा, इस केस में ओपन एक्सेस
यदि ट्रांसमिशन लाइन ओपन एक्सेस में अवेलेबल नहीं है तो इनको भी अवेलेबल नहीं होगा।
उसमें बिकॉज ओपन एक्सेस यू विल बी टेकिंग फ्रॉम दिल्ली, फ्रॉम चेन्नई, तमिलनाडु, कर्नाटका, ओके, इट कवर सो मेनी स्टेट्स। बट अगर वो दिल्ली से तो डेजिग्नेटेड डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन लाइसेंस दिल्ली में ही है, दे आर सपोज टू सप्लाई देम, तो उस केस में वो कहेंगे आप ओपन एक्सेस से नहीं ले रहे, हम आपको क्रॉस सब्सिडी चार्ज करेंगे। तो
इसका थोड़ा सा फंडामेंटल समझ लीजिए, इसलिए मैं जानबूझ के इसको छेड़ा हूं
नहीं, इसमें प्लीज ये थोड़ा एस्पेक्ट कवर कर लीजिए, इसमें काउंटर प्रोडक्टिव ना हो जाए। 1 मेगावाट एंड अबव कंज्यूमर्स के हम सोच रहे हैं इट वुड बी बेनिफिटेड, बट इट मे बी अदरवाइज रॉन्ग आल्सो।
Any other thought on this?
Yeah. I want to say that
I think,
say that again, please. Sorry. फिर से एक बार बोलिए।
Myself Praveen Kumar Shawkari, Deputy Director in CEA. Sir, under this section 43(4), it was mentioned that open access consumers consuming more than 1 megawatt, there are exemption from this USO obligation. Sir, in Green Energy Open Access Rules issued in 2022, the open access is defined as any consumer consuming more than 100 kilowatt. So there is an inconsistency between the rule which was already issued and this amendment, sir. I think we need to have a consistency in both of them. And even if we reduce this 1 megawatt to 100 kilowatt, it will benefit ultimately to the distribution companies, why? Because they need to pay less fixed charges rather than procuring more from generating companies.
चलो इसका फंडामेंटल थोड़ा समझ लो क्या है इसमें कि ओपन एक्सेस वी हैड डेफिनेटली अलाउड इट अप टू 100 किलोवाट रेट एज पर दैट रूल, बट अभी इसमें दो तरह के कंज्यूमर्स हैं, ओपन एक्सेस कंज्यूमर्स हैं, जो कि अभी थिंकिंग में आ रही है इसमें। एक है कि जो कि चाहता है कि मैं ग्रिड से भी कनेक्टेड रहूं, जब मैं अपना ओपन एक्सेस मेरा फेल करता है, लेट से वो ट्रिप करता है या कुछ करता है या फिर उसको सफिशिएंट नहीं है, तो पार्टली अपने से लेगा और पार्टली डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन से लेगा। तो ही वांट टू रिलाई मोर ऑन दी फॉर द रिलायबिलिटी पार्ट, ही वांट्स टू स्टिल गेट कनेक्टेड विद द डिस्कॉम्स। फिर क्या होता है, डिस्कॉम क्या चार्ज करता है उसको, यूनिवर्सल सर्विस ऑब्लिगेशन चार्ज करता है ना, और उसके चार्जेस हैं। क्यों चार्जेस हैं? इसलिए चार्जेस हैं कि वो जितना लेट से 1 मेगावाट का है तो 1 मेगावाट का सप्लाई वो 124/7 वो अपने प्लानिंग में बिल्ट इन किया हुआ है, ताकि एटलीस्ट एट एनी इंस्टेंट ऑफ टाइम ही विल नॉट डिफॉल्ट द मोमेंट दिस फेलो गेट्स कनेक्टेड एंड आस्क फॉर दैट पावर, इजंट इट? तो ये उसकी लायबिलिटी बन जाती है, डिस्कॉम की लायबिलिटी बन जाती है। यहाँ क्या कहा जा रहा है, यदि आप यूनिवर्सल सर्विस ऑब्लिगेशन नहीं लेना चाहते हो तो फिर आपको ये बेनिफिट मिलेगा। दैट मीन्स इन दैट इवेंट यदि आपका कोई ट्रिप करता है तो आपको चार्जेस नहीं देना पड़ेगा, बट एट द सेम टाइम यू कैन नॉट एक्सपेक्ट दैट द डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन लाइसेंसी विल सप्लाई। सो दिस इज द फंडामेंटल्स, बिकॉज देयर आर सर्टेन इंडस्ट्री who says that okay, I have sufficient, I have n-1, n-2, हमारे पास एक डिजी सेट्स है, दूसरा और भी सेट्स है जो कि हम कर सकते हैं, मेरा एक सप्लाई फेल करेगा मैं दूसरे पे ले लूँगा, so I don't need the support of the distribution licensee at all. So those people will get benefited out of it and they will continue to get open access, but at the same time they will need not have the service obligations. इस फंडामेंटल पे कोई किसी को कोई प्रॉब्लम है, कोई कहा गया
लेकिन ये इसमें क्लैरिफाई नहीं है, जो इसमें
जो मैंने बोला क्लैरिफाइड नहीं है,
it has to be elaborated because इसमें जो है जो मैंने बताया आप अपना जनरेटिंग सेट नहीं है बट ओपन एक्सेस आप लेना चाहते हैं, बट ओपन एक्सेस आपको ओपन एक्सेस लेना है, ओपन एक्सेस यहाँ से तो नहीं मिलेगा, ओपन एक्सेस आपको बाहर से मिलेगा, उसमें ओपन एक्सेस नहीं मिलेगा तो ये कहेगा दिल्ली में डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन लाइसेंसिंग है मुझे प्रीमियम दो, so that should not be this. He should charge at the same rate.
Yeah, please. So the most important word in the proposed amendment is all. So you're saying that to supply electricity to all consumers who require. So now the point is that
all consumers who require.
So now the point is that like all consumers who require the supply, who require a supply of electricity. Okay, now the point is that looking at this particular thing, it basically one can infer it very clearly, saying that all who require more than 1 megawatt. From where is a different thing altogether. So the point is that, like for an example, if it becomes a common rule saying that in this particular state, in my service area, so all the consumers who are more than 1 megawatt, in fact they can go and opt for open access, and I'm not going to have any preferential treatment to somebody who is actually taking the power under open access or somebody who is not. So I'm making it as a rule.
दो कैटेगरी बन जाएगा,
उसमें
है ना, एक है जो कि सर्विस ऑब्लिगेशन चाहेगा और एक है जो कि नहीं चाहेगा.
सर अभी ये डेफिनेशन में नहीं आ रहा, अभी जो आ रहा है उसकी
इंटेंट वही है, चलो उसको देख लेंगे. बड़ी
सर ये बोले कि कनेक्शन नहीं देता हूँ, मेरे पास कैपेसिटी की लाइन कनेक्शन देता हूँ, to go for connection. I want to have a supply, I go from invested country, तो कनेक्शन देने की
and this
कनेक्शन तो देखिए कोई डिनाई नहीं कर सकता है, because that's the law.
And so the second
ऑब्लिगेशन नहीं रहेगा. That means मान लिया कि उस इंस्टेंट ऑफ टाइम पे उसके अपने यहाँ ही लोड शेडिंग चल रही है, उसके यहाँ पावर नहीं है, तो यू कैन नॉट डिमांड कि मेरे को लेट्स से कोई 100 मेगावाट की इंडस्ट्री है और सडनली नहीं कर सकता है कि 100 मेगावाट में आपसे लूँगा ही लूँगा. लेट मी टेल यू व्हाट हैज हैपेंड. एक इंस्टेंस बताता हूँ मैं, तब शायद आप लोग ज़्यादा अप्रिशिएट करोगे इसको. अभी इम्पोर्टेड कोल की प्राइस बढ़ गई थी, राइट. उड़ीसा में काफ़ी सारे इंडस्ट्रीज हैं which are consuming more than 600 megawatt, 800 megawatt of that category. So what happened is suddenly they stopped their plant, imported coal अपना plant बंद कर दिया, captive plant बंद कर दिया. Entire load came onto the DISCOM and DISCOM was not prepared to supply that kind of quantity. Because you cannot overnight a power tie-up नहीं कर सकते हो, right? So these are all has to be planned together. यदि आपको 800 मेगावाट का सडनली पावर चाहिए तो आपको बताना पड़ेगा डिस्कॉम को, यस प्लीज कीप दिस पावर फॉर मी, आई कैन नीड इट एट एनी इंस्टेंट ऑफ टाइम, एंड फॉर दैट यू विल मेक एन अरेंजमेंट, एडवांस अरेंजमेंट, अदरवाइज यू विल नॉट. एंड इसलिए उस समय बहुत सारे प्रॉब्लम्स हुए थे जिसकी वजह से इंडस्ट्री हैड टू सफर बिकॉज उड़ीसा कुड नॉट सप्लाई दैट पावर टू.
So then there has to be one more thing which can be added to this particular clause, that like looking at this one, it is quite open that how much they can charge is not defined very clearly.
So charges to अलग से regulations में.
So whatever, let's say that in fact if I do have a as a DISCOM, in fact if I say that okay, if you are going out, okay, I don't have a universal social obligation for you, but at the same time in fact when you are taking the power from me for the supply, when you are not getting the power from your own source, then in such a case I may have a differential treatment for you. And then when I do make a differential treatment, so during that time, in fact, what is the tariff which I am going to charge at that point of time has to come out mathematically through some formula.
वो यहाँ नहीं आ सकता, रेगुलेटर देखेगा. आप कुछ बोलना चाह रहे हो?
Just to talk about the section 43 itself. So practically क्या होगा in case of a renewable generator?
Please free to express any doubt because today's session is whatever is written. जैसे अभी डाउट आ रही है ना कि इस लैंग्वेज में कुछ ठीक ठाक नहीं है, प्लीज ट्राई टू एक्सप्रेस योर फीलिंग्स.
So in case of a renewable generator, normally the settlement happen on a monthly basis. Now obviously at the end of the month you will come to know कब आपने जनरेट किया, कब आपने कंज्यूम किया, देयर इज अ डेल्टा. Now if you are a non-USO category, assuming that you are a non-USO category, 99% state discount will impose a temporary tax. It will be 11 rupees, 12 rupees, 14, 15, whatever the case may be. ये आज भी हो रहा है, particularly in case of Madhya Pradesh and Maharashtra and all. There is a regulatory fact which is happening for that. Now this is a clear-cut message over here. आप non-USO category में हो तो automatically temporary tariff में ही बैठोगे. So what will happen is at least renewables के लिए non-USO may not exist. You have to definitely get a USO only itself. Making a pure captive or a group captive open access for renewables basically not viable. So you're ultimately relying back on the DISCOM auction-based market model only. Just a view.
So practically what I've understood is you are saying it may not be practically feasible to have this kind of a construct. Is that correct?
No, sir. I would suggest that if you are defining all the way और
नहीं, वो सारा चीज तो डिफाइन आप कर नहीं पाओगे यहाँ पे.
बात वो नहीं है. तो मेरे हिसाब से इसके अंदर कुछ हमें एक और मे बी एक गाइडेंस है whatever should be given that temporary tariff is not what is meant for non-USO.
क्योंकि आप लोग ओपन एक्सेस वाले हो यहाँ पे बैठे हुए, तो मैं को ये बताओ कि प्रैक्टिकली ये पॉसिबल है नहीं है? क्यों नहीं है? यदि है तो क्यों है और नहीं है तो क्यों नहीं?
I think in this particular case, if it's an RE generator, I'll go under first category of consumer on a USO basis.
USO basis.
मैं उसी में जाऊँ.
नहीं ठीक है, that's perfectly fine.
non-USO में 11, 12, 14 कुछ भी लग सकता है.
ठीक है, वो तो जो नॉन यूएसओ में जाना चाहता हो तो वही जाएगा. यहाँ तो
है ना सर, फिक्स
मैंडेटरी तो है नहीं कुछ यहाँ पे.
अनफॉर्चुनेटली उससे जो ओपन एक्सेस का जो हमारा जो पूरा मोटिव है वो मोटिव भी पूरा किल हो जाएगा, क्योंकि इसमें आप एक अगर डिफाइन करते हैं
नहीं भैया, मोटिव आज के दिन पे वो वाली कैटेगरी है नहीं, तो मोटिव कैसे किल होता है यार?
नहीं तो मोटिव इसलिए किल हो जाएगा कि इन केस अगर कहीं इसको ओपन एंडेड अगर आप छोड़ देंगे,
ये तो एक फैसिलिटी दी जा रही है ओपन एक्सेस कस्टमर को कि आपको सर्विस ऑब्लिगेशन से हटना है तो हट सकते हो. इसमें किल नहीं,
एक बार कंप्लीट करो,
उसके कंसेंट से होगा ना. नहीं बिल्कुल मैंडेटरी बिल्कुल नहीं है. मान ले कोई जाना चाहता है वही ले सकता है.
नहीं सर,
यूएसओ डिफाइंड है
सर, उसमें एक ही चीज का कंस्ट्रेंट ये है सर कि अगर वो बाहर चला गया तो रेगुलेटर के साथ पॉइंट ये है. तो ये आज भी रेगुलेटरी कमीशन ऐसा नहीं है कि कोई बहुत ज्यादा सपोर्टिव है टुवर्ड्स द such kind of transactions. What would happen is that if the DISCOM proposes that I'm going to impose a temporary tariff for 12-13 rupees to the people who are actually taking power through open access when they are taking the power through me, so that is going to kill open access.
देखो दो चीज है, या तो आप अंदर हो या बाहर हो. अपने आप को आपको बहुत क्लियरली डिफाइन करना पड़ेगा. तो एटलीस्ट जो लोग डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन लाइसेंसी के साथ रहना चाहते हो और उस पे आप जो भी रिलायबिलिटी फैक्टर कह ले, जो भी कह ले, जिसकी वजह से आपके लिए वो सर्विस ऑब्लिगेशन प्रोवाइड कर रहा है, वो तो चल ही रहा है, उसमें तो कोई प्रॉब्लम है ही नहीं. यहाँ पे एक विंडो ये क्रिएट किया जा रहा है कि चलो यदि कोई इससे बाहर निकलना चाहता है तो व्हाई शुड ही कंटिन्यू टू पे दिस सर्विस ऑब्लिगेशन? कंसेप्ट तो वो तो डिटेलिंग में है, इसमें नहीं आ सकता.
इसमें एग्जिस्टिंग है वो ठीक है, और जो नए कंज्यूमर्स आते हैं because जब we are applying for a connection from the insurance company, they will ask the load and they will check how much load we are connecting to it. So once we have connected 1 megawatt load, then they are already creating an infrastructure for 1 megawatt. So they already have a universal obligation for 1 megawatt.
नहीं सर, दो चीज है. यूनिवर्सल ऑब्लिगेशन में दो पार्ट आती है. एक है कि आपका इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर विच यू आर सेइंग दैट ही हैज प्रोवाइडेड. He has given you a connectivity means you can draw 1 megawatt and 1 megawatt कहाँ से draw कर रहा है? वो अपने open access जहाँ से वो tie up किया हुआ है वहाँ से draw कर रहा है, right? Second is having a backup sources with the DISCOMs itself. So this part is
इससे ये लग रहा है कि USO above 1 megawatt को they can disconnect, मैं नहीं सप्लाई करूँगा. मतलब इसमें जो है कोई
डिस्कनेक्ट नहीं कर पाएगा. आप गलत कह रहे हो. एक मिनट डिस्कनेक्ट क्यों नहीं कर पाएगा? क्योंकि उसने ओपन एक्सेस कहीं और से ले रखा है, राइट? ही इज ओनली अ कंज्यूमर, ही हैज टेकन फ्रॉम अ जेनकोस, राइट, जिससे वो ओपन एक्सेस ले रहा है. उसके लिए आप बिलिंग चार्ज दे करके वो लाइन भी ले रखा है जिससे वो कनेक्ट कर रखा है. तो आप डिस्कनेक्ट नहीं कर पाओगे बिकॉज यू आर टेकिंग पावर एंड बिलिंग चार्ज आप दे रहे हो. आप बिलिंग चार्ज डिस्कनेक्ट नहीं कर रहे हो.
बट इसमें थोड़ा यही देखना है कि वो अगर सपोज उसका ओपन एक्सेस नहीं हो पाता 1 मेगावाट अबव यूजर्स का, तो ही शुड प्रोवाइड एट द सेम रेट, प्रीमियम चार्ज ना करना.
प्रीमियम तो तब करेगा जबकि आप आप अपनी सप्लाई ना रखते हुए उससे सप्लाई लेना शुरू करें।
जब आप दोबारा उसके पास आओ,
स्टेट कमीशन बता देंगे ये होगा। क्या कि देखो यदि आपसे वो आपने बिजली ले ली उससे, तब तो आपको पैसे तो देने पड़ेंगे।
Sir, one small point. First of all, this is optional. This is good thing to do. ये हम एक option दे रहे हैं आगे बढ़ के open access को।
मेरे को बस एक ही डाउट इसमें लग रहा है, इसलिए मैं थोड़ा टाइम लगा रहा हूँ इस पे कि is it practically possible हो पाएगा?
Sir, yes. See, the problem that we are facing today, one of the reasons why open access is not taken off, the reason is fixed charge is very low. Everybody is using it as a standby. और आपने जो example दिया, जब imported coal का rate बढ़ता है, वो वहाँ से लेना शुरू कर देता है, तो it has, say, Discom has a feeling that I am providing him all sort of hedging at such a small cost, which is a fixed cost. So if we have such option available where there would be some charges which would be more than the tariff, I think this is the way forward. This is the way to go for complete open access. Today it's a partial thing. This probably will lead to creation of complete open access in that country.
I disagree. पूछिए क्यों? सर ने बड़ा important सवाल पूछा कि this is practical. About 20 years back, Goa में there was a liquid fired based generating system which was supplying power to some customers, which was not allowed in the act. You can't cherry pick, okay? So you are going to take all the juicy customers away from the Discom and you're going to supply it. And first thing I'll do is I'll get myself privatized, okay? Private बनने के बाद मैं उन्हीं को supply करूँ जहाँ से मुझे पैसे आएंगे. This is exactly what happened in 1910. So then what will happen to the Discom? And how will you socialize it? Now I'm private. The underlying question which is coming is, as a private licensee or a distribution licensee, मुझे कैसे regulate करोगे?
So see, again, I am looking at it as only an option which we are providing to the consumer.
नहीं यार, ये option consumer की नहीं है, ये private distribution company जो license उठाएगी उनको option है.
अच्छा, I think it's a food for thought for everybody.
Just one small part. इसको हमने 1 megawatt पे restrict किया है. Can we say as may be decided in future by the central government or somebody, because it is highly rigid now. We can keep some flexibility. उससे ये हो जाएगा कल को, see, we are going towards 100 kilowatt of green open access. वो चीजें future में address कर पाएंगे.
I agree with you. I think we can have a look at it.
एक और मेरे को जैसे इसको अभी बार-बार पढ़ने से, जैसे आपने बोला कि ड्राफ्टिंग में मुझे कंफ्यूजन लगती है कि पहले तो दिस क्लॉज विल ओनली बी एप्लीकेबल इफ देयर आर मोर देन वन डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन लाइसेंस. इज इट करेक्ट?
Not necessarily.
नहीं, आपने जब प्रोविजो में लिख दिया दैट इन ईच एरिया ऑफ सप्लाई स्टेट कमीशन शैल डेजिग्नेटेड डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन लाइसेंस टू सप्लाई इलेक्ट्रिसिटी टू कंज्यूमर इफ द अरेंजमेंट फेल, तो भाई एक दिन में तो लाइन बन नहीं जाएगी उसके पास. तो भाई इसका मतलब है एक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन लाइसेंसी का तो नेटवर्क होगा ना उस कस्टमर के लिए.
नेटवर्क कॉमन है.
नहीं, आप मतलब इसको दोबारा से पढ़िए. मैं दो तीन बार पढ़ रहा हूँ. जब आपने प्रोविजो में लिख दिया तो एटलीस्ट वन डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन लाइसेंसी विल हैव टू हैव अ कनेक्टिविटी टू दैट कंज्यूमर.
वो कंडीशन ये देखी जा रही है कि मान ले जहाँ मल्टीपल है, ये प्रोविजो इज फॉर, यू आर राइट, दिस प्रोविजो इज मेंट फॉर मल्टीपल लाइसेंसिंग. So that in case of यहाँ पे थोड़ा सा भी कॉन्सेप्ट थोड़ा सा चेंज हुआ है. पहले क्या था, हम कैरेज एंड कंटेंट रख रहे थे, है ना, कैरेज एंड कंटेंट सेपरेशन कर रहे थे. इसमें कैरेज वाज विद वन लाइसेंसी ओनली, सप्लाई वाज अनदर बिजनेस. अभी क्या है, दोनों को आप डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन लाइसेंसी कह रहे हो, तो दोनों को डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन लाइसेंसी कहते हुए क्या है, दोनों की ऑब्लिगेशन होती है लाइन भी डालने की, एंड दोनों की हो जाती है कि यदि कंज्यूमर आपसे कनेक्शन मांगता है तो आपको देना पड़ेगा.
नहीं, मेरे को ये लगता है कि ये एग्जेम्प्टेड डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन लाइसेंसी वेयर देयर आर मोर देन वन डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन लाइसेंसी,
हाँ कुछ
हमें ये क्लैरिफाई करना चाहिए. अदरवाइज क्योंकि प्रोविजो में है कनेक्टिविटी, तो एक ना एक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन लाइसेंसी की रहेगी उसके पास.
Sir, one small
I think what I was suggesting is let's have a look at it, think over it. Abhi it's 1:55 right now. We reassemble at around 3 o'clock. We are breaking for lunch. आधे घंटे. चलो 2:30. He wants to continue it further. So maybe we'll again resume it just after at 2:30, just after lunch. Thank you. Please. Just your housekeeping.
Housekeeping.
Everybody, please collect your lunch from outside. Or we'll get it served, and then you can take a short break, and we can continue with the sessions.
That's what